My microphone is off. Now it's on. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Kazali Arela, Gomuliko Podcast, live from New York. It's 7 p.m. over here in New York, and it's getting darker and darker, and we're here at the all right, a little bit of context. BBNJ, Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, PrepCom 2. We're negotiating the institutional arrangements of the BBNJ and other stuff as well, um, which brings us to the point of knowledge of indigenous peoples, particularly Pacific Indigenous knowledge, and with the richness of references to indigenous peoples in the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction text. We thought, it was myself as well as High Seas Alliance, you know what, we need to start bringing knowledge holders, indigenous knowledge, front and center into this whole thing. So this is a live stream that has occurred once a long time ago. That was during COVID, on my birthday. Pacific Indigenous knowledge. Where do you think it's going right now? A whole lineup of knowledge holders, activists, advocates, youth elders, a whole mix of it, giving their take on where indigenous people's knowledge is going right now. And this is no different, except for back then it was my birthday. This is not my birthday. So what you will be experiencing is a state of the union in a way, of the Pacific Indigenous knowledge, where it is, where it's going, and speed dating style, meaning I'll have a lineup of 10 of guests for 10 minutes, where we'll have a conversation with guests from Hawaii to Australia to Federated States of Micronesia and then some. So for the next 3.5 hours, if you're joining, sit back, relax, and binge watch and enjoy the ride. Like I said, it is in the margins of the BBNJ negotiations, and it's with the help of the High Seas Alliance. So I'd like to kick off with a video message from the executive director of the High Seas Alliance, to share a little bit. She's somewhere in New York, somewhere, couldn't make it in time, so she recorded a video, and we'll kick off with that. And then I'll hand it over to Olive to share a little bit about the Pacific Indigenous engagement strategy that High Seas Alliance is unpacking. And then we'll get to where it came in for, which is the lineup. So first and foremost, we'll start with Beck.
Guests, colleagues, friends, and partners. On behalf of the High Seas Alliance, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's marathon live stream, Mobilising the Future of Ocean Governance. This gathering brings together Indigenous experts, scientists, activists, and negotiators from across the Pacific region. Together, we will reflect on the vital roles Indigenous peoples play in shaping the future of the ocean, particularly as we move from words to action in implementation of the BBNJ Treaty. The Pacific has always been at the forefront of ocean stewardship. Its people's knowledge, traditions, and lived experiences remind us that ocean governance is not only about legal texts and institutions, but also about stories, culture, and identity. Today's dialogue is an opportunity to honour that leadership and to recognise the essential contributions of Indigenous peoples in operationalising the treaty. I'd like to thank our speakers and panellists for sharing their wisdom, and all of you for joining us online from around the world. Your presence is a testament to the growing recognition that ocean governance must be inclusive, equitable, and grounded in diverse ways of knowing. We hope the conversations that follow will inspire practical pathways for cooperation and co-creation as we embark on the journey of BBNJ implementation. Thank you once again for being part of this important exchange. I wish us all a fruitful and engaging discussion.
Right, mic on. So that was Beck Hubbard, Executive Director of the High Seas Alliance, and part of the High Seas Alliance, what they're also doing is like rolling out like a engagement strategy that basically what is to get socialize the BBNJ within all the 7 indigenous social culture regions of the world. And we're starting off in the Pacific, and the Pacific coordinator of High Seas Alliance is sitting across from me actually in this meeting room. And I'll now hand it over to Olive.
Thank you, Ghazali, Talofalava, and warm Pacific greetings to everyone joining us today. As we say, when the paddle meets the wave, the journey begins. This HSA Marathon live stream is about honoring that journey, led by Pacific Indigenous experts whose wisdom, knowledge, and leadership are guiding the future of ocean governance. For generations, Pacific people have been stewards of vast ocean spaces, guided by deep cultural ties and traditional knowledge that sees the ocean not as a resource, but as kin. Today, we bring those voices to the center where they belong in shaping how the new BBNJ agreement is carried forward. The High Seas Alliance has committed itself to this through our Indigenous peoples' engagement strategy. This strategy is not about consultation after the fact. It is about co-creation from the beginning and in every step of the process. It is about design thinking, inclusive workshops, and building a living network of traditional knowledge holders who can guide decisions on marine protected areas, environmental assessments, and future governance. It is about ensuring free, prior, and informed consent and recognizing Indigenous leadership as essential to effective and lasting conservation. This live stream is one step in that process. Over the coming sessions, you will hear powerful insights from the Pacific reps who are mobilizing not just ideas, but action. Together, we are charting a path where Indigenous knowledge and science paddle together, side by side, steering the BBNJ agreement into real and equitable practice. So as we begin, let us carry forward the spirit of the Pacific, the strength of the Waka, because the ocean connects us all, and only together can we safeguard it for generations to come. Fafitai for joining us on this important journey.
All right, and now I've gone black. I have no idea why I've gone black. So let me figure that out in a few. That is one of our like main helpers in this live stream, and wow, this is new. Let me just keep on talking. I'll throw Olive out of it, and let me do it like this. All right. That's not helping either. Hang on. Now you will get like the fuzziest image of me. So brace yourself. And it's definitely going to be like, this. Well, we'll have to work with this, no problem. The thing is, like, I woke up in the morning, looked in the mirror, and that's probably like this is like the best view of me anyway. Anyway, so how to Indigenous now is actually trying to, bring in these leaders from all over the world in terms of like, well, what are actionable, what is happening, what are ideas, what are the pain points, what are frustrations, like the whole package when it comes to, what we want to do, what Indigenous people see, what Indigenous people feel. So when it comes to where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now, bringing up our first guest, which is Brandon Makaava. Brandon, know me for a very long time. I've been to the nation of Hawaii. Brandon is vice president of the nation of Hawaii. Brandon, when we did the last live stream, And compared to now, where, in your view, where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? And welcome.
Aloha, Ghazali, and thank you for putting on this forum and always being a big voice for us on the international scene. Um, for us, I think indigenous knowledge is trending upwards. In spite of all the issues we're dealing with, of course, this new administration and the lack of resources being shared to indigenous peoples right now, but I think it is trending upwards because people are beginning to realize that indigenous knowledge is not just trivial knowledge. We are the keepers of um, the pathway to the future, existing with nature again, in harmony with nature. This is the only way we get through climate change and all of these things. And so now, um, I think a few years ago, we used to get invited to speak at, these climate change conferences, and we were just kind of there to check the box. Now they're wanting to understand and see, like, what do our ancestors say about droughts? What did our ancestors say about, rising tides? What did our ancestors know about all these different things? Because the science is not sciencing for them, and so indigenous peoples had sciences. It was just colonized and pushed to the side in the name of profit and power. But I think people are going back to acknowledging the importance of indigenous um, knowledge and indigenous science, and it's up to indigenous peoples to step into these places. I think sometimes we're fearful to be exploited and be appropriated, but like a lot of times, better than most. If we're not at the table, we're on the menu, and so we need to step into these spaces and take up these leadership roles and be the biggest voice in the room, because they have to start listening because they've run out of solutions.
Right. And Brandon, for those that don't know, actually, Nation of Hawaii, been there, amazing place. What are you doing on the ground? Like when it comes to Pacific Indigenous knowledge, like we can talk about it for forever and a day at the UN level. What are you doing on the ground when it comes to that? Like, and what comes to your mind when what you want to do within the nation?
For us, on the ground, like we really got back to working in the Aina again, in the land, in our ancestral lands, actually, that we govern over. So our community is 45 acres of sovereign land, the only sovereign land base in Hawaii, and we're up against the mountain at the top of the Waimanalo Ahupua, which is the Hawaiian way of districting islands before. And an Ahupua is going from basically a land district, a land division that goes from mountain to ocean, but is connected by a stream. And so what we've been doing over the last 2 years is we've been restoring our ancient taro terraces that are in the mountains that have been covered up by invasive trees. And so we host something called an Aloha Aina Workday every last Saturday of the month. And when we first started, there was about 12 volunteers, and half of them was us. So really, there were 6 volunteers there. But our last Aina Day, we had about 200 people, and we've been consistently having hundreds and hundreds of people show up to these Aina Days because we have to make the Aina an important aspect of everybody's lives here in Hawaii. It's not just our responsibility to take care of the land. It's also the responsibility of the non-Hawaiians to also care for our lands in the same way. And so we've been gathering these groups for the last 2 years and building capacity and giving non-Hawaiians kuleana. That's the Hawaiian word for responsibility, and having them in the Aina to see the restoration work happening themselves, and to see us bring back our native plants and our native systems and the native animals and plants coming back in while we restore, has really changed a lot of people's minds, because it can't just be the indigenous peoples of these lands fighting for the betterment of our Aina, when everybody else benefits from this, from the betterment of this Aina. And so we have to call in our non-Hawaiians. And so about 70% of the people that have joined us every month are non-Hawaiian. And so this has gotten the attention of our Waimanala has a military base near the ocean side of our stream, and they've been getting a lot of runoff and pollutants coming down there where their people are playing and frolicking in. And of course that's not from us, because in between Bellows and where we are against the mountain, there's a golf course, there's agricultural zones, so who knows what is going into the ocean, and there's runoff from the streets. And so we've partnered with the military to try and monitor these streams. And so we work with an organization called Purple Maia, that is an indigenous technology nonprofit, and we're putting sensors on base to monitor flow and solidity and like all of these different things that we need to understand for the health of the stream. But I think it's just been a lot of groundwork that we've been laying in the community. But just to bring back the importance of indigenous leadership, like we are leading these restoration efforts. We are not government funded. We are not being told to do these things. We are taking it upon ourselves to lead this, because there's a lack of leadership now, and it's a curse and a blessing, right? The curse is it's a lot of work. The blessing is nobody wants to step up to do the work.
Mhm.
And that's where it's left to us, and I talk to our Hawaiian people now, and we always used to talk about fighting for the land, fighting for the land. And now I talk to them about, we don't need to fight for the land. The land is already here. It's been here. What we need to do is fight for the kuleana, the responsibility to care for the land. That's a fight that we can win, because these guys cannot handle it.
Right. And Brandon, when you talk about responsibility and also and your ability to sensitize particularly non-Indigenous Hawaiians or taking responsibility, what goes through your mind when it comes to socializing or making people understand? Let me rephrase it. If other Indigenous peoples want to do the same thing, what you're doing, what would you tell them to start with?
I think a good way to start is just reaching out to surrounding communities, and to kind of get a sense of the needs in these communities, because the needs in the communities surrounding the indigenous areas are probably the same needs that we have as indigenous peoples too. And so making those needs common, so that when we help to support their needs, we're actually supporting our own needs. Working with the military is very difficult for us, because there's a lot of things that we don't agree with the military. And so what's been the biggest change in our mentality is finding the common needs of where us and the military can agree on. Because there's a million things we can fight about, but if we can find the one or two things that we both want to see happen, that both line up in what we want to see as a people, this can help to build a better relationship for all these other things that we don't agree on. We're utilizing these partnerships with focusing on the solution to be able to break into these other more difficult conversations and situations that we eventually are going to have to confront the military on.
Right.
But I think finding our common vision together.
Right. Brandon, the next test is a little bit late. So if you don't mind asking one or more questions, additional questions, let me pivot a little bit. When it comes to things that you're doing that is very aspirational for a lot of Indigenous peoples, but what is very relatable, I think also where people are coming from. So Brandon, I'm always intrigued by people's origin story. In terms of your origin story, what made you the person that you are right now? no need, no, yeah, it could be adversity or anything else. Anything that you would like to share to whoever is listening, whoever is watching, like personal lessons, personal experiences that actually helped you become the person that you are right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it was getting closer to elders in my community, and not being afraid to kind of give them, like sit in their space and just be of service to them. And you know, I've been doing this work for maybe going on 15 years now, and I may look young, but I'm like 44. And so I had a totally different life before this, and that life got upended at I had a regular job and I was doing great and everything, and then I got fired, you know and I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself and my life. But I met Uncle Bumpy, who is my mentor, Uncle Bumpy Kanahele, who is the president of the nation of Hawaii, um a few years prior, and I always wanted to understand sovereignty, Hawaiian sovereignty, and what was his goals and what was his vision. And I thought I could just get that in one conversation, and really I couldn't. So when I got fired, luckily when you get fired, you get to collect unemployment. And instead of going to find a job and get right back into the rat race, I took that time to go and sit at the foot of my uncle and to hear his stories and to kind of see how I could help him and all of that. And that totally changed my life. And that totally changed the trajectory of who I am and who I was. And it was because of serving and being of service that this took me in a totally different journey. And this journey started with a tragedy, right? My life got upended when I got fired from my traditional job. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and that was the worst day of my life, I thought. And now when I look back at it, it that day was transformational for me. That changed my life. So not everything that we view as a negative currently is gonna be a negative forever. We can take those negative things and turn them into the most positive things, is if we can just learn from those mistakes or learn from what happened, and chart a new trajectory for ourselves. But that trajectory only happened for me when I kind of humbled myself and I wanted to serve somebody that I've always admired, that I always thought needed more support in the community. So finding my elders and him being able to teach me my rights as a Hawaiian and pass that knowledge on to me, that gave me a new sense of purpose in my life.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
so it's a little bit of my story, but it's something I think other people can see sometimes in their own community. And I think this connection back to our elders is a big connection that we need to get connected back to, because they're the knowledge holders for that we need to help as well.
Right. Um, well, Brandon, absolutely. Like, thank you so much for sharing that, and also like coming from like yeah, from that vulnerable position, right? Like, and having the courage to share. So some hollow for that. Um, One final thing, it's like, what is the one thing actually when it comes to whether it is like indigenous or non-indigenous peoples, what is the one thing that you really want to instill upon these people when it comes to like Pacific Indigenous knowledge, where it is right now, where is it going? What's the one thing that you would really like to drive home? What's the point?
I think the most important thing that I share with people nowadays is having a responsibility to where you live. And it doesn't have to be your indigenous homelands to have a responsibility to where you live. I think getting in touch with indigenous peoples of those lands of where you are plays a big role. And as indigenous peoples, to to leave some space for them to take on responsibility, I think plays a big role. And that's difficult sometimes, because not all non-Indigenous peoples have the same heart and the same intentions. But we're not going to be able to do this alone. And so we're going to need to build coalitions. We're going to need to get out of our silos, and we're going to need to start incorporating Indigenous knowledge. But also, we have to, when we bring them in, we got to teach them protocol. We got to teach them structure, of how these things are operated, but give them some space to play a role, not a leading role, but they can play a role.
Right, absolutely. Brendan, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy over there in Hawaii. Hopefully to see you. I'm really hoping to see you soon again at the international stage. Otherwise, I go to Hawaii and go visit you at the Nation. Say and say hi to Uncle Bumpy for me and everyone else at Nation.
I will, Ghazali. Take care, brother.
Right.
Aloha.
Aloha. All right, pivoting directly to Juliana Rapu. Juliana, thank you so much for joining early. We're doing like speed dating style in a way. The super interested what you shared in terms of like, where you came from and all, and what your messaging and your thoughts as well. Let me jump right into it because we have a little bit more time. When it comes to when you saw the question, where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? Where did your thoughts go?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Ghazali. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I was really excited to see the lineup that you had, because a lot of those that are set to speak today are people that I have admired for quite some time. So thank you for thinking of me. When it comes to the question that you posed us, I think my first thought was how much we have changed collectively as human beings. In the days of my father's youth, it was not advantageous to be Indigenous. He grew up, well, I'm originally from Rapa Nui. I was born and raised in Rapa Nui, and I currently live in Hawaii. But in the Rapa Nui of my father's youth, access to education was very limited. And he was lucky enough to be one of 6 children that got put on a ship to travel to mainland Chile in order to go to school there. And, the culture there was not only just completely shocking and a brand new world and everything else, but he experienced a lot of discrimination. It was not good to be Indigenous back then. And I think our world has changed a lot. And today being Indigenous is somewhat sexy, and I think there's a greater interest in Indigenous knowledge. And I think my father's generation, because of their loving concern for our generation, in some ways tried to maybe suppress some of just Indigenous ways of being, tried to emphasize learning other languages, so that when we would get to schools, we wouldn't have such a thick accent, and we wouldn't be picked on because of our thick accent. So I think a lot has changed. Overall, I feel there's a greater appreciation for what Indigenous knowledge holders can offer. And it's interesting to see this reflected also at the UN level, where Indigenous individuals are getting more recognition. Even, as we think about like the BBNJ, there's so many places in the text itself that calls out for Indigenous knowledge to be part of the contribution to the protection of the oceans. And so, yeah, overall, I feel like we've grown a lot as human beings. I feel like we are at a place where we can appreciate Indigenous knowledge systems and also Western knowledge systems and don't see them as necessarily competing against each other. We can appreciate how they complement each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, when I invited you to this live stream, you shared a lot of information in terms of like origin story for one. I'm super impressed by it. Also, by the way, happy birthday to your grandmother. 99th birthday. That is definitely something. That's definitely something else. In terms of the way that you talk about your grandmother, and for people that are listening, like when it comes to Pacific Indigenous knowledge, what is the one thing or one things actually that you admire in terms of like your grandmother instilling upon you?
My grandmother's generation, they really didn't talk a lot. They just lived, and I think we got to learn by the way they lived. And every now and then they would, tell us and teach us. But I learned a lot just by getting to observe her. And I was raised not just by her, but by several different grandmothers, because our community was really little. We were about 3,000 people growing up in Rapa Nui, and it was prior to Rapa Nui really being on the map as a tourist stop. We had about one flight a week coming into our community. And on the streets, the primary language was Rapa Nui, and we just spent so much time with each other, and everybody kind of was always with each other, so a lot of grandparents were raising grandchildren and other children that weren't necessarily blood relation. I really appreciate the generosity in that generation. As a community, we might have not had much, but we were very wealthy in generosity. And whenever there was an opportunity to help somebody, people would just show up and help. You didn't even have to ask for help, like my grandmother, when she needed help planting her field, people would just show up and help. And back then, people didn't have access to construction workers to help build homes. Everybody kind of had to build their own home. And so, when you were lucky enough to get enough bags of cement on the island so that you could build a home, everybody just kind of showed up and tried to help you. My grandmother, she had many children. She had 13 children. And so she was always nursing babies. And when, other women would pass away during childbirth, she would, take care of the babies that were left without a mother. And this was not just her practice, but that whole generation, everybody just was so generous in giving of their time. And I feel really fortunate that I got to observe that, because I feel like we've become so individualistic in this world. Modern world tends to be a lot more fast-paced and individualistic. But I feel that if we are somehow able to bring that model of being into modern day, I think as a whole, our world would be much better.
And then the way that you talk about your grandmother, like it's absolutely fascinating, and it brings what my mind goes in terms of like storytelling, and also like the necessity or like the important element of storytelling when it comes to like Pacific Indigenous knowledge. When it can you explain to people that are like unfamiliar with Indigenous knowledge within transmission, how the importance of storytelling? Yeah, something that, yeah, is that, could you explain that to other people?
Yeah, I think, well, essentially what others are sharing with us is their lived experience, right? And if it's not their direct lived experience, it's the experience of somebody they knew, that they got to learn from. And it's really interesting to get to hear their firsthand accounts, because then you can see like what, I just think I think it's so valuable to get to learn from other people's experiences. No single human being will ever be able to amass all the knowledge that is required, to face different challenges like climate change adaptation. And so that's why it's so important for us to really make the time to sit down and listen to the stories of others. I feel every community has something to offer, Indigenous communities, having been on the lands and the oceans and those specific places for so long, have acquired the knowledge of these lived experiences over millennia and over generations. And so if we can make the time to sit down and just really, really listen, we will understand what they were able to learn. So I feel like, part of our responsibility, Ghazali, and I say you and I because we are on this, on this meeting, we have access to computers, we are able to speak in English, we have access that maybe our brothers and sisters don't have access. And so I feel like it's part of our responsibilities to also make sure that their stories are shared and that we are able to communicate on the other side how valuable both knowledge systems are, both the Western and the Indigenous and traditional knowledge systems.
Well, then speaking of like the one side and other side, Hawaii on one side, Rapa Nui on the other side, and then being standing with 1 feet in either, and also knowing or learning from you that like when it comes to like for you very important like ecosystem restoration, environmental education, what it's maybe would be good for you to share like what you're working on right now, like it's like you've been doing this for like 25 years plus, and what you're working on, and also like it's hopefully, and I'm sure that that will inspire other Indigenous peoples or non-Indigenous peoples to contribute or to model.
Yeah. Well, I think I shared with you that I grew up covered in dirt and ocean. I just, growing up in Rapa Nui, and I think any child that has the opportunity to spend a lot of time outdoors, we begin to really appreciate the world and how it works. And also recognize how small we are, how small we are and how dependent we are on healthy ecosystems. And so when I grew up and went to college and started really asking myself what I wanted to do with my life, I recognized that I just wanted to be outdoors. I wanted to be outside. So I looked for a job that would allow me to be outdoors, and I didn't find much. And so I had to make something up. And so a couple of friends and I, we founded an organization named Pono Pacific, and we do environmental restoration throughout the Hawaiian Islands. We started off just with 4 of us, and we've grown over the years. Now we manage approximately 20,000 acres across 8 islands. We felt a need to help encourage the next generation of stewards. And so we would take students out with us, when we would do restoration work. And what started off as like a fun thing to do with others eventually became a nonprofit. And so the first year we had 16 students for a summer 6-week program. And that, intention has grown, and to date we have over 6,000 students that have gone through our doors. We have about 500 students that come through our doors every year. I love watching people grow. I love seeing communities thrive. I love especially seeing young people fall in love with their natural world and gaining practical skill sets on how they can help take care of it. I love seeing our elders being able to pass on information to the new generations, and I enjoy seeing those young generations hungry for that kind of information. And so what we try to do is to create that space where all of that exchange can happen. I love my home of Rapa Nui, and I try to help wherever I can. I raise my hands often, and back in 2018, I started collaborating with a group called Coral Reef of the High Seas because I learned that they had an interest in helping protect the Salas y Gomez and Nazca ridges of the South Pacific. It's a region that has the highest marine endemism in the world. So you look at the world's oceans, the biodiversity hotspot is that little place. And I was just wanting to learn more and see how I could help. I joined this group, and recently, thanks to Conservation International, I've been contracted to help bring the voices of adjacent communities into the process of BBNJ, so that when when the countries start elaborating, a formal proposal, these communities can also actively participate in all those steps. And so I'm really grateful that in our world, in the seats that are making these big decisions, there's an appreciation for local communities and Indigenous communities. And I feel very grateful that I get to be a fly on the wall and see this magic happen. So that's what I'm working on right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Juliana. Obviously, would love to talk hours with you, unpacking all this. But definitely would love to see you. Hopefully, PrepCom 3, maybe COP 1 and beyond within the BBNJ space. Definitely breathing life into all the richness of references to Indigenous peoples' rights and knowledge into this agreement. With Dr. Frances Fakauta, she will be coming out later. She's like this, where the pedal meets the wave, right? So definitely looking forward to working with you in the BBNJ context and elsewhere as well when it comes to developing and sharing Pacific Indigenous knowledge. Thanks so much for your time. I have Uncle Sol waiting in the lineup, thank you so much, and mahalo for everything that you've done, that you're doing, and also what you're about to do as well.
It's very nice to get to talk to you, Ghazali. I really hope I get to see you in person soon. So.
PrepCom 3. Let's do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
You.
Uncle Sol, aloha. Well, I saw you just an hour ago.
Yeah.
But can definitely listen to you for hours. Uncle Sol, your experience within the environmental movement goes a very long way. International Seabed Authority and other places as well, now in the BBNJ. Uncle Sol, when in your experience and also in your view and also in your where do you see Pacific Indigenous knowledge going? Where are we?
Well, I think I can say personally that I think I've been privileged in that the last 50 years of my life have been in part immersed in a lot of things that I think are primed and they're relevant to what is happening right now as we speak. And by that I mean is that I've been really blessed to have had kupuna that even though I didn't really understand it at the time, but it's clear that what they had done in my life is that they kept feeding me, and by that I mean that they kept pouring into me stories, and they kept pouring into me experiences, places that are all part of my home, which is Lanai in Hawaii, and I didn't recognize that when I was younger, but surely they all lived to be to live to their early 90s. And so for me, that was quite a time in my life when I was realizing that some of the stories being shared to me were their experiences, their lives in not just Lanai, but throughout the Hawaiian Islands. And I was hearing their stories from their own perspective, and I realized that these stories were stories that are 90 years old, and this happened when they were just little children. And I get to envision that in my mind's eye, and I was very appreciative of that. And those images and those stories never left, And so every time I think about them, and every time I recall the stories, I see the images of them in my mind. And so I think that process was something that, like I say, I feel like I've been privileged with, because it has now helped me in these times to have the perspectives, I believe, of our kupuna. And I still believe that they're here with us, so that they're not really far away, and that all we need to do is to kahea, call for help, call for them to come and understand that in their own ways, they will help to support the things that are needed for us, especially in a time when we surely need a lot of help. So I am thankful that I had that kind of an opportunity to grow up. And then now, I think when Hawaii is challenged with lots of changes that are global, climate change, we're experiencing those effects of climate change, coral bleaching, sea level rise, extreme weather conditions, and it's no different elsewhere in the world. But surely we are feeling those effects. And the question that I often pose to myself is, what do we do? And so I truly believe that that the olelo noeao, i ka wā mua, i ka wā hope. If you want to move forward, then you need to look back, look backward. And this concept has helped me, because I believe by looking backward that we become more immersed in understanding our past, and that includes our kupuna, that includes situations and experiences that we've learned in our past. And the idea is for us not to repeat them in our present or in our future. And so it helps me to discern where then I should go, given the situation at hand. So I like to think that the past 50 years has been a preparation and a time that has helped me now to gain experiences that are going to be needed in order to move forward. And I like to think that that I've been gifted with that kind of upbringing, with that kind of nurturing by my tutus, to be relevant today. So I'm thankful. I really am thankful, and it helps me to know that I have that kuleana that was shared earlier. We all have kuleana, but this one is not just a personal kuleana, but I think it's clear to me that we as Hawaiians have an inherent responsibility to Malama, our home and our resources, in order to make available for the generations to follow. And had our kupuna in our past not done that, perhaps we would not be beneficiaries of what we have enjoyed in our lives. And in retrospect, you know, I have mo'opuna, I have grandchildren, I have great grandchildren, and I only need to look at them to know that I still have kuleana, and that kuleana would be to be sure that I leave them what was gifted to me in my life, and as much as possible to try and mitigate some of the changes that are affecting this movement forward, and to try and minimize as much as possible those impacts so that they will be able to at least have a measure of the things that we have been gifted with, and hopefully that they will not be burdened with so much change in their lives. And I think about that, and that's why for me it's not a burden to take on responsibility in these times. It's just part of an inherent responsibility. So yeah.
Right. So, Uncle Sol, for those that haven't been in the BBNJ context, for example, like this week, you took the floor. You did a chant in Hawaiian, and also you use, like, in your presentation also, like, you use Olelo Hawaii, like the Hawaiian language. When it comes to, like, when it comes to Pacific Indigenous knowledge, can you please describe for people that are listening, that are watching, the importance, or why you add a high level of importance to chant as well as Olelo Hawaii?
Well, you know, I grew up. My aunt was a kumuhula in Lanai for over 50 years, so I was immersed in hula. I was immersed in Olelo, although I'm not a fluent speaker of Olelo. And I grew up with kupuna who are manaleo. They were the original speakers of our language, but these times were in part necessary training, I think, for me to know that part of our responsibility is to put in place those kinds of protocols, or those kinds of opportunities when people gather. You know, there was a protocol to invite people into your place. There was a protocol to reciprocate with that, so that the process of doing an oli or a chant of welcome or of embrace that would be reciprocated was to in part share the mo'kuauhau of people, so that we knew who they were that were coming if they were strangers. And in retrospect, we would share who we are. And it all helps to identify the genealogy of who we are. And in that process, what we gain is a familiarity with people that now we understand connected through our genealogy. And then that makes for now a comfortable gathering. And in times of decision making, it also is important in helping to make sure that we are coming for the right intentions, and we're coming here to deal with important situations that require us to make important decisions. And part of this protocol is to know that we are gifted with the knowledge that we have, and that we don't know what we don't know. And there are going to be opportunities when we are going to be in a situation like that. But to kahea also, and to call our ancestors to be in our presence, is to help support the idea that our kupuna are still assembled in and everywhere that we are. And when we call upon them, what they do is that they help us to understand things that we don't understand. What they do is that they will anticipate and know things that we don't know. And what our kupuna are gifted with doing is helping us. And all we need to do is to understand that relationship and be open to that and to allow our kupuna to speak to us in ways that are not normal, you know. So we talk about dreams. We talk about little incidents when your mind all of a sudden was changed in a direction and you thought, oh wow, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm so, you know, if you discern those things, they could possibly be your kupuna trying to have a conversation with you in an important time. And I like to think that for us coming into these really important meetings that are global, and we're dealing with people that we don't have much experience or relationships with, but nonetheless, it is important for us to have a conversation. That sometimes the ushering in of our kupuna will help to make that relationship, even though I may not have had any physical conversation or interaction with any one person that's assembled from throughout their nation states around the world. The kahea and the oli can help to usher in that kind of relationship. And all I can say is that I do that because it helps me to be grounded. It helps me to know that I am here for a purpose that is important. And I want the people of which I need to garner understanding, relations, and support for the things that we are asking or needing as the people from Hawaii. And you are the people that are going to ultimately be making decisions, because right now I'm not in a position to make decisions, but I am seeking those positions in this process. And if they can be inspired by not just my intervention and my thoughts, but if they could be inspired by the spirit of our kupuna, then to me that's powerful. And what I have found is people who, after my interventions, have come to me, all strangers. I don't know them personally, but they're coming from different states and they're saying, "We really like what you said," or "You've moved me." You know, I'm now thinking about, and to me, that is as important as the message that we bring to help build this relationship that is going to help us to move us where we need to be as the people of Hawaii and as indigenous people collectively around the world. You know, so.
Right.
So if this is helpful, then that's why I do it. You know.
Well, Uncle, like your contribution has been like more helpful in more ways than you know. And un- Uncle, like unfortunately, the next guest is already waiting. So I unfortunately have to move on. But more than happy to hear you in the next couple of days actually, and please continue doing the chant and also like speaking in a little Hawaii as well. Mahalo for your work,
Yeah.
Uncle Sol, and
Thank you, Ghazali, for making this available. And I'm really happy, and I'm going to stay on so I can hear all of the other participants coming in. And so I want to say aloha to you, mahalo, and then aloha to those who've spoken already, and then to those who are about to speak. So,
right.
ahui.
Mahalo, Uncle Sol. I'm pivoting immediately to Ben. So we're going from Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and now to Papua New Guinea. Ben, thank you so much, first of all, for your patience. To be honest, like we're running a little late because I had like some technical challenges, but it's not your problem. Thanks so much for joining this lineup. We've known each other for a very long time. You were former Indigenous Peoples Fellow, Office High Commissioner. You did Jeff Small Grants Program, now working for the Philanthropic Foundation. Ben, when I invited you to this lineup and the question, where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? Um, yeah, what went through your mind? Please share that with us. What you thought about that?
Yeah, thank you, Ghazali, for this inviting me to be part of this important conversation. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation because within the region that I am from, especially within the Melanesia region, there's so much that is happening here that is causing our people to be moving away from what has been important to us for generations, for time immemorial. So I'm really excited that I can be part of this this conversation and share some things that have been affecting the moving away from the indigenous knowledge systems that we have, and what few people have come to realize and are trying to do something to revitalize or bring back what has been lost in some smaller way. So yeah, I'm really excited that I can be be here to share with you and if possible find some ways that we can bring together support to support some things that is happening within our region here.
Right. Ben, I have to like do almost like a monkey going from tree branch to tree branch. Um, Within the context of PNG, what are you seeing in terms of like opportunities, maybe ideas or like challenges when it comes to indigenous knowledge?
Well, I mean from the current direction that we're heading to, and it's it saddens me to see that a lot of our younger generations are moving away from participating or going back to trying to think and just contemplate on how important our traditional knowledge is, because of so many other influences that that are happening right now. So for some of us that had grown within the community and had been part of all these systems and growing up with our with the elderly people in the community and had the chance of participating in all those traditional rituals, and then coming to being part of this modern world had seen that there's so much has been lost, or people are especially moving away from a lot of important things that had been once very important to us. So in this wave that we are fighting against, the current that comes from outside is very strong. It's very strong, and for few of us that are trying to to advocate or to try to do something that will preserve those traditional knowledge, I think it's a really tough road for us all, and it's I mean, compared to the years that had been the past years, people have already now realized the importance of keeping our traditional knowledge systems, and there is this opportunity where we have our local NGOs, local community-based organizations, civil society organizations that are within our region. They're really struggling, and they're really fighting hard to maintain those systems at the community levels, at the community level. So we and for me to be part of a philanthropic organization and working within the region, not only Papua New Guinea but within the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and part of Fiji, I've seen that people, we all have the sort of coming to the same realization that it's important to be part of to keeping our traditions, and our traditional the indigenous knowledge systems. So at a smaller scale, people are already trying to, especially in terms of doing a conservation work, they're trying to approach the conservation work in a sort of a form where it involves a lot of all the indigenous peoples that indigenous people. So they can be looking at it from a perspective that is important to them. What is really important to them, not only from the scientific perspective, and they are now getting back to also building, we call it houseman or houseman. That's a men's house where, or even, and then men's house and woman's house. So that used to be something that is very important to the community or to a tribe. That brings everyone together to, to just have the men sit there and have the young women sit there and then teach them to become men and teach them to become women, and that has been lost. And because the issues that we're having now, it's all because we've lost something that serves as a foundation for all of us. And within the program now, we have seen that people are reviving some of those traditional men's house and women's house, and bringing the elders, the traditional chiefs, to again teach them, on some of the things that are already that already lost, or in the process of going out. And and there's a lot of things that they're doing, and I think the one thing that needs support is that those people who are working, they're really low in terms of resources, helping them to do those work that that they're doing, to reach out to so many other communities, to other communities. So something has been happening on the ground already to try to bring back all those knowledge systems that we have, but there's still a lot of challenges there too, because as I've said, we are trying to move against a huge current that is coming towards us, and to fight through is as individuals or as a small group of people cannot we cannot really achieve a lot that we want to achieve, but with support from like-minded people like us, other people within the region, and other indigenous peoples, I think we can do a lot in terms of sharing ideas, experiences, and do a lot for we can at least change something within our own community or within our country. So yeah.
Right. Ben, I've known you for a very long time, and the one thing that strikes me as, and I think that is something that is almost like counterintuitive within the advocacy space, is that you, like myself, like to fight in the background. Yeah, so our, but like many people don't know actually that you are fighting in the background. Is that correct? Are you experiencing the same, or am I the only one experiencing that?
Yes. Yeah, and this is something that really saddens me at some point, where this fight that we are fighting is very important, and we can not continue to fight this in the background. We have to come out in front, and come to a sort of a platform or a space where everyone come to understand the importance of the fight that we're fighting. But I see that, and then from the past experiences that had taken me to come to to knowing you, and to come to the space that now like at the UN, becoming a fellow. I think that's something that everyone should see as as really important, and they if there's support there from the local government, or from from people within our own like with our own indigenous peoples, I think that would be really, really helpful. But when only few of us are trying to, advocate and talk about what is important for all of us, and then the part of the group is moving the other direction and trying to, go against us again, and then this is something that I see that is really, challenging, and but I think when people come to realize, I mean, from the experiences of our other indigenous communities around the globe, I think they've gone through a lot already, and they've realized the importance of keeping what is important to them, and they're fighting because they've gone through extremes. But I think for our case now, in especially in the Melanesia region and for Papua New Guinea, we have not come to that stage yet, but we are getting into it. But people have not realized this as yet. But it will come a time where everyone will know that, oh no, what we're doing is not right now. We have to go back to revisiting what has been our foundation, or what has been important to us before. So I think that's when they will sort of come to support what we are doing, and try to just have this at the forefront where everyone can see the importance of this.
Right. Ben, the next guest is waiting, but like, just one final question. Like, it's those that are watching, or those that are listening, what is the one thing that you really want people to like be to be aware of when it comes to what you just said in terms of like conservation, when it comes to Pacific Indigenous knowledge, preservation, and what is the one thing that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that I really think we should all be doing is to keep this strong network among ourselves, and let's continue to advocate, let's continue to encourage one another, and let's continue to talk about issues, and bring in more people as we can, and on our side. So if we were to fight this fight alone in our own own space, or in isolation, I don't think we will be able to do something. So it's always good to be to have this network among ourselves, and fight this fight together to achieve maximum results that we would want to see. So let's be supportive of each other always.
Right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time. Have a very nice day over there in PNG, and definitely let's stay in touch. I'll keep bombarding you with emails and updates, and keep working on conservation and indigenous rights.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to more conversations. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, Ben. All right, next guest is yo. I haven't seen you in a very long time, yo. I think like probably a couple of hours ago. Hopefully you're feeling well. Thank you so much for joining this lineup. And you were there several years ago when we did the version. Same question. Holy shit, what's that? Same question for you as well. Like, Pacific Indigenous knowledge. Where do you see it going?
Well, thanks very much for inviting me, Ghazali. If you can hear children in the background, that's because I'm in the floor in my apartment building. A lot of families, and so especially on Friday nights, the children go out and play. So it's all fun, and that's all that is. Please don't be alarmed.
It's part of the show.
No, but I really appreciate being invited to join this second iteration of your series. I had a really good time last time, and I was thinking about where I guess things have gone, or how things have developed since the last time I was with you. And I'm going to confess that I actually don't remember when that was. Was that in 2020, 2021? I feel like it was COVID times. Was it COVID times?
It was definitely COVID time. I want to say 2021. Yeah.
2021. Yeah. No, I mean, I think one of the important things to hold in our hearts, especially those who are advocating for Indigenous issues, is that Pacific Indigenous knowledge is here, has always been here, and will hopefully always be here. But the way it exists, the shape it takes, the impact that it has, that is an evolving matter, and that really depends on those who hold that knowledge, who advocate for that knowledge, who defend it. And there are different spaces, including in the multilateral space, where this knowledge is discussed, where it's analyzed, sometimes critiqued, but also where I think it is displayed with significant power and impact. And it depends on whether those who hold and value that knowledge are able to believe in it and to represent it in different ways. That's just a very general, I guess, response. If you want to ask me about specific processes, I cover many processes, and I can spend the remaining 8 minutes I have talking about every single one.
Well, if you want, but I think it's maybe like the angle. What would be interesting is that like when it comes to like the process that you're in, the questions that you get asked, or like what are some of the questions that you feel like, oh my God, like I really need Indigenous peoples to like to say something about this, or like I really need information from Indigenous peoples on this.
Oh, well, there's actually, there have been many moments in the different processes I cover where I felt, and I'm just going to be very honest here, where I felt like I need more voices other than mine to be speaking about certain things. And many times there are many other voices that speak. But I feel limited as a representative of a government, of a state, in some of the advocacy work that I do, because ultimately it's not me as a government representative to be advocating for many things involving Indigenous issues, but it's really the Indigenous peoples themselves, the holders, the practitioners, those who live the Indigenous life, who need to speak up. Whether it's presenting specific examples of Indigenous knowledge, or talking about Indigenous governance systems, or how Indigenous peoples communicate with each other and get information passed along different networks and eventually filter up to the states. These are sort of practical lived experiences that will be really great to hear from Indigenous peoples. And Uncle Saul was on this live stream, a couple of guests before me. And I've had the pleasure, and I'm going to say the honor of working with him and learning from him in multiple spaces, including in the International Seabed Authority. And one of the things that he has managed to contribute is basically talk story about history, about Indigenous history, and the challenges, the atrocities, the injustices that Indigenous peoples have suffered for decades, centuries, even millennia, and how some of those atrocities are still present in various forms in current multilateral international processes. Some on the surface, some under the surface. And those sort of experiences, I, as a government representative, I sometimes struggle to articulate, and perhaps I shouldn't be the one articulating any of those things. The space should be given to Indigenous representatives to articulate those histories, those pains, and encourage government representatives, state representatives in particular, to correct those injustices, including through law.
Mm-hmm. Let me pivot a little bit. I'm always trying to like figure out like reverse engineer in a way, like what can we do better as Indigenous peoples at the international stage. You all touched upon like definitely like participation. Yeah, like is there anything like is it in, like in participation? Is it in, or maybe like expectations? Any thoughts on that? There's a lot of Indigenous people when we go to like ISA, plastics, BBNJ, climate. Anything that you could share in terms of like managing our expectations?
Expectations as Indigenous participants, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like in terms of like outcome of negotiations, for example.
I think I don't even know if it's managing expectations really. I think the expectations are already there, that states in particular routinely fall short of where they need to be on a lot of these issues. I do think that Indigenous participants, Indigenous representatives need to keep pushing for all that they want, even if others might criticize them for going too far or asking for too much. Keep pushing, keep pushing. There has to, the Indigenous participants also need to recognize that they are pushing for these things in systems, in processes that were built not necessarily, or perhaps definitely, for many of them, without Indigenous peoples in mind, or sometimes with Indigenous peoples in mind, but in a negative sense. In the sense that there are hurdles put in place specifically to prevent them from fully engaging in the way they should be. So those things, and I'm not saying anything that's new to Indigenous participants. Of course, they know all of this. But once in a while, I'll be in a process. I'll be negotiating as a state representative, and I'll interact with Indigenous representatives, especially the ones that are new to multilateral negotiations, for example. And I can see a lot of the enthusiasm that they have. And I want them to hold on to that enthusiasm, even when it seems like it's misguided from certain points of view, because that's how you start shifting things. But it's going to be usually a long, hard battle. So that's a bit of a downer. But I think it's good to be open-eyed about some of these things.
It's not a downer, but it's like a reality check, eye opener. Like the next guest is waiting as well. Just one final question. What do you do to like unwind from all these negotiations? That is, any tips?
Well, tonight I was very happy because I have some macadamia nut dark chocolate treats that I actually got indirectly from Uncle Saul. I don't know if he's still watching us. These are from Hawaii, and these are some of my favorite chocolates. So anyone who knows anything about me really knows that I love chocolate. And so after a long day, I would just kind of sit down and munch on some chocolates. And that is the safe for work response that I'm willing to share with you. Chocolate.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yo, thank you very much for joining the live stream, and also like for all the work that you've done in all these different processes. It's not going unnoticed for like Indigenous peoples all over the world. FSM has been pieces through the FSM and other states within the pieces as well have been very supportive of Indigenous issues and rights. So wanted to also say thank you during this live stream also to you and your work as well. And hopefully that we'll be able to continue this work for a very long time.
You know where to find me, man. Actually, you know all the places to find me.
All right. As long as I bring chocolate, then it's all good. Right?
It's never expected, but always enjoyed.
Appreciate it. Well, see you on Monday. Have a good one. See you. Thanks. So that was Dr. Carter. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. This is going like a really fast paced. Apologies for the little bit of a delay. But I've been told that any Pacific live stream when it comes to Indigenous knowledge is incomplete without Dr. George Carter. So thank you so much for joining. The question where Pacific Indigenous knowledge is going right now. Very interested in hearing your reflections. When I ask you the question.
Tarfalava, malo soifua malangi ma fatalo fatu pa ilu fai whaafonga mai le nei whaaso le nei tai au po lea wauri foi po lea fiafi le tūlangi o iai. I also like to acknowledge not only to our my Samoan, Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Pacific participants who are online, but also acknowledge that I am here on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land here in Canberra, Australia, and recognize, acknowledge the elders past and present. And thank you, Kasali, for organizing this marathon event online. It's great to have a platform to share some insights and some of the work that supports not only your work, but those of you who are currently in New York in the BBNJ negotiations.
Yeah, thank you. And it's when it comes to the knowledge of Indigenous peoples, and you've been on many panels, yeah, like so. Where is it right now, and why would you like to see it going in terms of like conservation, climate, plastics? Where do you like to see it going from your point of view?
Yeah. You know, we are at a moment where we are in terms of here in Australia, but also wider Pacific. We are in a phase of a great renaissance in terms of traditional knowledge and Indigenous knowledge being brought into academia. There is a embrace. We are at a point where we not only see it in academia, but we're starting to see it in government and policy, an embracing of Indigenous knowledge. And you may have heard how Indigenous knowledge is slowly being brought into foreign policy. We saw it in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in the last government. The current government here in Australia are trying to define and trying to find ways in which Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous policy is part of foreign policy. So there's an excitement there. But it's something that's always been embedded in many foreign policies across the Pacific. And we say this in terms of the research. We've proven this in terms of research, but also new forms of bodies of work that's now starting where across the Pacific, Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous ways of knowing have always informed policies in these countries, especially where Indigenous communities have thrived or have led governments, you know, in places like in Samoa, in Tonga, in Kiribati, in Tuvalu, where it has, you know, informed every day. And what we're doing now in academia is trying to recognize that knowledge that's always been there, the values that have been used in these policies, and bringing them out. Because I found in my research, but also in the way that I interact with policymakers who are also pushing this at the international level, this is what informs why Pacific people are very idiosyncratic in their diplomatic behavior, standing for environmental integrity, standing for stewardship, whether it be intergenerational values. These are values that are embedded in Indigenous, on the ground, in local communities. They inform national policies. And now we've seen, especially in the last 10, 15 years, has really what informed the diplomatic behavior of these states across various different spheres that they've come to work with. And we've seen this in climate change, where I'm very much closely associated with, not only by governments, but also NGOs in these spaces. We're seeing it also in ocean, where you are embedded in this work. And I've seen it as well, you know, those Indigenous values, you know, around sharing, around conservation. We're seeing it, you know, as part of why we have BBNJ, you know, for marine protected areas that are underpinned by these values. So we're seeing it there. I'm now associated with a new piece of work that looks at the other global commons that we are far behind on, which is space or aerospace. And I was challenged by scholars, can you bring the lessons and the norms that have been introduced by Pacific people in the area of ocean, in the area of climate, into space multilateralism? And so that's the new endeavor as well, because it's what we've been doing, pushing through using our indigenous values, our indigenous peoples as the leaders of our governments, as NGOs. We've been pushing that, and so it's time now also to move into that space. It's space, and we always talk about indigenous people of the balance and the harmony of land, sea, and sky. These have been the markers in which have shaped and guided our navigation through history, through the islands. And so we must take that stewardship of connectivity, of not only relationships, but also the protection of not just land resources, in terms of climate, in terms of ocean, but we also must be mindful and be speaking up in these spaces on aerospace, because we're starting to see the challenges of what we saw. We pollute as much as we can, but with no thinking in terms of responsibility. And we're doing the same in terms of space. We're sending things up without thinking of what future generations will have to deal with. And so that's that's why I say it's exciting space. And it's very much informed, not by greed, but informed by the need to protect land, sea, and sky. So yeah, that's where I see indigenous space. Of course, there's quite a lot of work that's now happening. Some would say it's the fad of the moment of indigenous policy in climate, in ocean. But it's also, it's not just a fad, it's something that we've always lived with. And we are now recognizing it more and more, celebrating more and more. Of course, we must also learn and also try and repatriate the trauma that has been lost along the way. But we also must look to the future, where some of us are very much happy to work in that space, which is what else is there that needs knowledge from indigenous peoples to inform the way as we move forward. And we've seen it in terms of space, and that's sort of where the body of work is at the moment. Yeah.
Right. And in terms of, there's a lot to unpack here, what you just now described, and it's super fascinating. Within the academic space and also diplomatic space, there's a lot of capacity building, there's a lot of outreach. What is, like, in your view, like the main hurdle actually when it comes to like explaining what indigenous knowledge is, and
Sure.
like how do you overcome it?
Yeah. I use my example here in Australia at the Australian National University as a perfect example. I'm in a Western system, Western university, and I'm trying to, as part of my work, teach Western education, but also bring along with it by celebrating, but also making sure that they understand the trauma that has happened of indigenous knowledge, indigenous people. So it's an exciting space to bring indigenous curriculum that has been allowed by our peoples to be shared in these institutions, and we bring it along. And it's great to see, and as I say to when I teach military, or when I teach diplomats here in Australia, or when I teach my students in postgraduate level, this is not culture shock. Don't be shocked by this when we talk about indigenous knowledge. Like, some of you will roll your eyes or shrink to the corner and like, okay, this is not me. No, you need to hear this. It's bringing that alongside. And what we have with universities is the power of curriculum. When you are in spaces where you are able to shape knowledge and share knowledge, and also frame knowledge in particular ways, you are able to see that when they move out of university into the world of policy or world of business, they're no longer afraid that indigenous knowledge is something that's packed in a little corner. Yes, there is knowledge that's packed in a little corner, which is sacred knowledge, but there's also knowledge in sort of bringing people along genuinely, and bringing them not just because of purely participation, but purely because they are part of the bigger system and it should inform the bigger system. And that's sort of where we also trying to translate indigenous knowledge. And part of that is learning confidence in your identities, your indigenous identities, your safeguards. All what we've sort of studied, I think many of our panelists have understood. But we also need to now look at the other side, and I think that's where our work comes through, is the pragmatism of indigenous knowledge, the pragmatism of having indigenous policies, so that people are not afraid of it, and we work with it genuinely. Of course, there'll be a lot of mistakes, but that's we must acknowledge and expect that's what will happen.
Right.
And so that's what we do. We bring in Pacific knowledges into our curriculum here. We're writing curriculum, and we're sharing it not just for Pacific peoples, but for Australians, and especially decision makers. And we share it in a way that's not in your face. We share it in a way of empowerment. This is how this is building the success in Samoa or in Fiji or in Papua New Guinea. This is the success story. Because over and over, the way that we are taught about the islands and indigenous peoples is from a negative frame. And that's important. And that's also, that needs to be there, because that's critical. But we also need to talk about the positive side and how it builds people, how it builds communities, and how these traditional structures, which we've ignored, which we've left aside, should be brought in and should be the main aim of our work in development, our work in diplomacy, our work on economic growth, and all different factors. This is where it needs to come through. So that's sort of it's not just a vision. It's what we are doing in terms of our studying. It's what some of our PhD students are focusing on, bringing that in, and so that informs not only the research but informs the teaching here at the university.
Right. I want final question, if I may. Within the BBNJ space, if you've seen where there's a desire and successful desire, but successfully been able to establish that there needs to be parity between indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. For many non-indigenous persons, that is like Chinese. Like why do you need parity between the two? As an academic with indigeneity that also moves in the diplomacy space, how would you explain that, like the necessity of parity between the two?
Yeah, to complement each other. We talk about in the sort of Western form of education of logic and triangulation of knowledge. And we say that indigenous knowledge, Western science, if triangulated with indigenous knowledge, we say that's the most powerful solutions that will come out of it. So, for example, in weather prediction, if the weather science have said over the years, this has been part of the increasing of heat waves, but from indigenous knowledge, they said this is part of why these sea creatures have now been lost. We're unable, and they will be able to predict weather. And when we put these two knowledges together, we may find that maybe the solutions in some of our medicine are some of these let's just say, for example, seagrass that's no longer there, right? There is that we've just focused on one area and we've said this is what the weather is like today, rather than saying what we've also lost or what has maintained harmony in these places have been this. And that's where we say why we need indigenous knowledge. And that's just in that area in terms of it makes what we've always said in indigenous knowledge, providing harmony. It's not about right or wrong, or it's not about time. It's about harmony. And indigenous knowledge not only provides the lost knowledge lost thinking that's been there, but also future efforts. And that's sort of the way that we provide this. We also see it in the way of diplomacy, in the way of interaction. Through many tabletop interactions, through diplomats or through trying to get leaders in a room to talk about bringing people together in one of the cases in the Pacific, that couldn't happen. But it was only when a leader conducted a traditional kava ceremony of sevu sevu to apologize that we were able to see leaders coming back together again. So it wasn't because of a UN style or a bilateral meeting or the need of a Trump to come and create the peace appeasement. It was through a traditional indigenous ceremony, which indigenous leaders understood, that brought together the harmony. And so that's what we say. Is it Trump that could have been, or could we have an indigenous value or indigenous practice that could bring consultation between Ukraine and Russia? That's where we also say there is that other that sometimes we've ignored. Maybe there is an indigenous practice of Ukraine and Russian peoples that would bring about conversation. Could that be explored as a possible avenue? And that's where we say where indigenous diplomacy comes through. Maybe it's not Trump, but maybe it's the traditional leaders. And has that been explored, and has that been undertaken? Yeah. I guess that's how we would try to explain it that way.
Maybe it's not Trump, but maybe it's Dr. Carter. Definitely.
No.
But like I think that that's a very very good point that you raised about like the necessity that it's about the necessity of parity between the knowledge of these people's traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge, not only within the scientific space or in the enhancing the knowledge space, but also diplomacy. Dr. Carter, thank you so much for your time. Next guest is already also online as well. Thank you so much, and looking forward to like staying in touch and also like tracking your work as well, and also learning a lot more from you. In the near future as well.
Thank you very much, and all the best thank you for putting this on. I've been watching it from Facebook as well this morning.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. After.
All right, Lindsay Davies, my man.
Hello, my brother.
How's it going?
Good, mate. Good.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's been a while, eh?
It's been a hot minute. You doing well?
I'm well. Yeah. It's full disclosure. Myself and Lindsay, we were roommates during the Permanent Forum this year. We both were, like attending the Permanent Forum on these issues. Amazing guy, amazing bloke when it comes to storytelling, educated by hearts, like full of when it comes to like knowledge of these peoples, knowledge exchange, very strong. And I could go on and on about about that, and also like harnessing technology, like having indigenous youth at heart as well. Lindsay, when I compiled this lineup, I just had to have you on this in this marathon speed dating, whatever you want to call it. Well, yeah,
that means a lot, man.
Of course, no brainer. Also curious to hear your thoughts about like when it comes to indigenous knowledge, Pacific indigenous knowledge. Where did your mind go? How did you synthesize that question?
Yeah, for me, when I read the question of where is indigenous knowledge of the Pacific or Pacific indigenous knowledge going, the first thing that always comes to mind is that I think we're at a very exciting point here in the Pacific where we've got not only policy and really deep systemic changes occurring, but more and more often we're getting invited into those tables to share from our cultural perspectives. And for Indigenous knowledges, that means that not only are we being welcomed and listened to at times, but we're able to lead with autonomy, with competency, and holding our cultural values, traditions, law, stories, language at the forefront of that next generation. And it's a really exciting position. Obviously, we've fought, Indigenous peoples have fought for a very long time to even have that seat at the table. But now there's that air of change coming through where, thanks to the work of, all those deadly strong leaders that have come before, the torch is really bright for the youth and our next generation of young Indigenous leaders to embrace Indigenous knowledges within the Western systems and see a lot of success. So yeah, when I read that was the question, I thought that there's a real air of prosperity around it, and that it's an exciting space. It's a space where there's a lot of dynamic sort of movement, and a lot of opportunity for new and exciting knowledges to form. I
Right.
know me and you have spoken at length, brother, about how with Indigenous knowledges do not sit in a vacuum of knowledge. It's not like we've only got one way of looking at things, that it's always the right way. Oh, sorry, are you there? There we go.
All good. All good.
And there's, a really exciting point where we've got Indigenous knowledges meeting and merging with Western knowledges to form this new body and type of knowledge that is respective of both cultural sides and both systems, and able to create some really beautiful outcomes that nurture our peoples and create wellness and health for all.
Right.
So yeah, that was my initial thoughts when I heard that question. Yeah.
Bro, appreciate it. What I've like to pick your brain about is because you're also not only you're a storyteller, educator, but also you also are linked to in digital.
Yeah.
Like so, like when it comes to like what Pacific Indigenous knowledge is going on right now, particularly when it comes to um, the technology angle.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
do you see challenges, ideas, or like, oh my God, I hope that they're not doing this because that's like super dangerous for our knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think technology and Indigenous knowledges, like, Indigenous peoples were the first inventors, were the first people to embrace technology. But as we're stepping into what 22nd and 23rd century technology is, there is that air of risk, and there is that air of, some really deep challenges occurring, not only with ICIP and those sorts of principles in and around technology, but also with the formation of AI and, those really deep machine learning sort of pieces. It removes the value of our relational knowledges, and the beauty of Indigenous knowledge, and it's not just founded upon knowing something or the rightness of something. It's the relationship between all knowledges and that greater web of knowledge. And in embracing those sorts of new age technologies, we lose that sense of relational knowledge. Therefore, can we ever actually find a place where Indigenous knowledge fits within those systems? I think there is a common ground at some point, but it's a very tricky space to navigate. I think technology and Indigenous knowledge very much holds a ground. It holds a ground for storytelling. It holds a beautiful place where our young people can learn and be nurtured about our Indigenous knowledges. But how they get included in there is a lot of risk. There is a lot of, potential for, some really disastrous sort of outcomes as well. So it's finding that balance, like all things, finding that balance and working through it. But I think that there's so much potential, in particular with sharing stories, in particular with capturing our knowledges and preserving our knowledge. Especially in the face of climate, in the face of some of the real, rather heartbreaking situations that our brothers and sisters across the Pacific are facing in the face of climate change, technology holds a really deep spot in making sure their knowledges are preserved, their knowledges are captured, and are able to be continued to be practiced for generations to come. In a safe sort of space. So, yeah, I think technology is going to play a massive role in and around Indigenous knowledges, and how we navigate the next sort of 5 to 10 years as we see this massive growth of AI and network thinking and machine learning is going to be a really interesting sort of one. I think as long as Indigenous people continue to be in those rooms, my brothers and sisters continue to pioneer that space and work towards finding that ground where Indigenous knowledge can be held with safety and with our rights maintained in sovereign matters. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see where it comes from, and I hold a lot of hope for it. But at the same time, we need to embrace it with that air of coming at it with safety and coming at it with that lens of it could really hurt and tarnish not only our knowledge but also our peoples and our lands and our languages and our stories. So yeah, it's gonna be a tricky one to navigate, my friend.
Right. Yeah, well, kind of quickly, the double tap on that. Like when you talk about like knowledge, safety, and rights,
Yep.
obviously within the context of AI, but also like context of like mechanisms, databases, and all that stuff. You working with Indigital, but also like as an Indigenous person, and also a painter, obviously.
Yep.
So intellectual property is also something that you have in high regard.
Massively.
Yeah, so any thoughts, any ideas, actually, though, when it comes to safety and rights, like what is something that like we as indigenous people need to be like very much, be very mindful of, and also like those that are like non-indigenous, actually, that they need to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think it's, as we've sort of touched on there, those rights and that intellectual property needs to be upheld to an absolute highest esteem, in particular around like AI generated sort of stuff, and being sure that our art, our stories, our cultural knowledge doesn't get fed into these generation or AI sort of systems um, without our consent and without our knowing. And at the moment, unfortunately, you see that a lot of that is occurring. So not only is it our responsibility to hold strong in knowing our values and our rights around ISIP and whatnot, but it's also how do we then get Indigenous people in those rooms to help with decision making, to help uphold our rights around AI, and how do we then also work towards creating those frameworks of policy to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Um, so I think that that's a really really scary space for a lot of Indigenous artists in particular. We're seeing time and time again where you open up bloody ChatGPT and you ask for an Indigenous artwork and it's literally just stolen off someone else's painting, and you're like, where's this come from? How does this exist? And like, who, what, how has this occurred, right? And it's absolutely wrong and it's vile. So yeah, there's a lot of work to come in that AI space, but I think if, as Indigenous people, like we're the ones to help guide and dictate that. Like as much as we need the opportunities afforded, we need to occupy those spaces and hold true to our, obligations to not only our stories and our country and our law, but also, our communities and our ISIP in the same sort of ways. You're not going to, you know, let go of your identity, and we should not back down in around that AI or any of those ISIP values in particular.
Right. Like Lindsay, like it looks like you're about to get like a couple of beers coming away because it look very like relaxed over there. So well, yeah, let me like is there one more question? Well, because we're talking all within like Pacific Indigenous knowledge within the ocean context.
Yeah.
When we had the conversation, something that stood by me, and really love for you to double tap on that and unpack that a little bit if you can. Is that like the oceans and the seas are our kinfolk? Uh, not only do indigenous technologists help care for them deeper, something along those lines.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
like,
please.
you know, as Indigenous people, you know, we don't just view the ocean as the ocean. It's not just like the water. It's not just that. It is as much of a part of our being as our brothers, our sisters, all of our relatives, all of our kinfolk in the land. The ocean plays that role as well. And Indigenous knowledge is what helps us not only care for that place, but also continue to carry its stories. Um, so we have a very deep relationship with the ocean. Not only does it provide us with food and water and energy, but it continues to nurture us. So we have that obligation to the knowledge to continue to nurture it as well. And as if we're not doing that, then we lose that really deep connection and lose, like, you know, the beautiful presence that is our oceans. So I think that Indigenous knowledge plays such a strong role in how we care for our water country, our sea country. Um, and it's important that not only our Western practices continue to embrace it, but also go deeper to understand that really deep connection that is needed to share its stories and share our oceans lore. So yeah, I think that Indigenous knowledge is the key to not only just caring for our water, but continuing to see our oceans survive and thrive and live long, healthy, and full of prosperity.
Right. All right. So one more question now, because like it doesn't seem look
Sure.
like your cold brew is coming anytime soon.
No,
Um,
no, no. You're good, brother. I'm just chilling at the beach. So I
oh,
thought that it'd be a suitable place to talk about the ocean is be at the ocean. So
oh, 100%. Like, the the final question is, as you like in the metaphorical fluffy chair,
yeah.
and um, yeah, people are listening, people are watching. Let's say 10, 15 years from now, um, uh, what is actually that you would like to see when it comes to Pacific and Indigenous knowledge?
Um, what I'd love to see in 15 to 20 years, I'd love to see a space where young people and our young leaders are really nurtured through Indigenous knowledges and um, through our, you know, Pacific region. I'd love to see a really tight network of sharing between our knowledge holders and our elders that have led the way and our young people that are coming through to continue sharing. Um, I'd love to see some really deep collaboration between nations and you know, countries and Indigenous peoples, because you know, our knowledge here in Australia is different to our brothers and sisters throughout the Pacific, but we're all here to continue to learn and nurture and really deepen our connection to our ocean and our sea country. And if, you know, we can learn from one another at a really deep level, then I think that you know, we're only doing our jobs as Indigenous peoples and acknowledging and respecting our obligation we have to the ocean um, in the best way possible. So yeah, that's what I would love to see, my brother. Some really deep sharing and yeah, some of that succession and nurturing of our next generations.
I appreciate it, mainly because like you're also like, even though your Mo game is definitely better than mine, 100%. But like you're still like considered indigenous youth, so I'm very
Yeah.
much looking forward to yeah, like, very much like looking forward to see return in this international space. But definitely also like working with you on this like 10 to 15 year goal, like making that come to fruition, whether it's BBNJ, whether that is like climate, plastics, all that stuff. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for yeah, for joining this live stream. Say hi to Vic for me, if you see her, and yeah,
Awesome, brother.
see you soon, man.
Thank you, brother.
All right,
Much
appreciate it.
love. Be well. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
See you, bro.
See ya. Well, moving on to Ulukoa.
Hey,
The
hey, hey.
Man, the thing with you and me,
Yeah.
like I think I saw you like, remember like the last time we were here, like here in New York was 2012, right? Permanent
Yes.
Forum. I had a lot more hair back then,
I
and
didn't have the
we were
gray.
both. Well, okay. Um, no, I have it now. Like so, like less hair and gray hair as well. What in terms of your origin story, and if and I think that is very fascinating, is that like it's not that else. Yeah, let me start with the origin story. Is that like it's you were in the armed forces, right? Combat vets, and you told me that you knew war before you were actually old enough to drink, to legally drink.
Yeah.
Um, but
Didn't stop
like
me.
right, but like the thing is like this what you talked about as well was that that informed you to becoming like a healer, right? Um, and also like doing the work that you do now in Guam as well as in Hawaii. Sorry, so that's like basically like telling your origin story. But like find that very fascinating, and like wanted to lay that up in a way, because when it comes to origin stories, I have mine that actually started with my mom. You have yours as well. Please, I think that is very very important to lay up for the question that we have, like where specific Indian knowledge is going right now.
What was that question?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so like your origin story in terms of like the impact of yeah,
Oh,
being your
yeah.
mom being and you
Yeah.
becoming a healer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my mom, um, she had a very big impact on me, and her grandma had a very strong impact on her. And what I didn't realize that um, my great grandmother was a healer, and passed it on to my mom, and you know, even in her last years, that I was it was a privilege and an honor to get to um, be her caretaker, you know. And I remember I had to meet with Kumuhina for something else, something totally different. We were talking about some cultural sites and all that. And you know, it was interesting because we were at Zippy's, eating, and she said, she actually said it that way. She, it's an honor, to be able to take care, and people they often say when it comes to your when it comes to taking care of your elders in their last final season, oh, it's time for me to give back, or um it's the least I can do, it's obligation, and that, and but you know it's an honor and it's a privilege, and I like to remind people about that. It's not a duty or an obligation. It's a blessing, and I'm so glad that I got to spend that time with my mom. But anyways, yeah, I learned so much, and it's such a balance. We go through life, and there's such a balance that I didn't know at the time, at such a young age, being thrust in a situation of of war, and you cannot, like, when it's real. I remember coming back and people asking me, like, what was it like? And the first word that came to mind as I paused, I was like, it's real, because it is real. You cannot complain. You cannot put a pause, you know, but it's real. Um, and then years later, as I grow older, and then realizing that at the same time or concurrently in my journey through life, um, I was destined to also learn the art of healing, you know, healing others, bringing healing to my community, to the Aina, to the land, to the sea, just, you know, healing through my mom. And so, yeah.
Right. So with that, because like the thing, like when we talked about before, and like that's why I find like important to so that people know actually like the background that's uh, of you as a person. Um, when it comes to the question that we are discussing right now, where Pacific Indigenous knowledge is going right now, um, yeah, how do you? Where does your mind go when yeah, when you read that, when I read that question, when I asked you that question?
Yeah, you know, so anyways, thank you for asking the question and thank you for reaching out because you've been a brother of mine for such a long time, bro, you know, and I like having discussions with you, you know. But when I got that email, you know, asking, I saw that sentence and I've I've been immersed in a traditional learning institution, you know, of all my life, you know, in a Hawaiian setting, and so immediately I that's what my mind went to, you know, and I thought about it and I immediately thought about how it's still alive, it's still alive and well. The institution, at least in my experience, the institution of indigenous knowledge and transmission intergenerational is very much alive right now. At least in Hawaii, it is, you know. And so that's immediately where my mind went. But um, at the same time, as I reflected on your question, you know, I was thinking about so what what is unique or different about this time period right now, 2025. I was trying to like, so what's different? You know, what is different about this time period? And first thing came to mind is technology. Technology is different. So what is different about technology? And you know, I went to the screening of Chief of War. It was right in my backyard. It was literally on the beach that I grew up on. You know, like right there. And it was nice to you know see it there and see. Yeah, it was a big thing. But and to see technology being used in a way to in a creative way, right? To share culture, right? In this case, the Hawaiian culture. But but beyond that, I started thinking about all the different ways technology is used, right? And um, I thought about how you know I just returned to school last year to continue my PhD, right? And they told me about Chat GPT, which I never knew about, right? And and it's like, wow, you can go into a conversation and they'll tell you this and that, and like artificial knowledge, right? And and how uh this traditional knowledge, right? It's so accessible, but um who feeds it? And um how um like is it, you know, how correct is it, you know, who's feeding it, right? So the ways that technology is being used, you know, and then of course, you know, I had been going to the participating in the intergovernmental sessions at Geneva for the protection of traditional knowledge and traditional culture expressions this past couple of years, leading up to the diplomatic the DipCon, to include the application of traditional knowledge for genetic resources, right? And this is all at this, you know, my mind was just going like this, you know, and I'm thinking about Of course, we talked about databases, right? And about gatekeeping, right? And so, on the one hand, yeah, the database can be good, right? And I myself, I'm an ethnographer. I love oral histories. I love documenting oral histories. I think each person, each elder, is they're a living library. Like I've said it long before it became, something that everybody said. Oh, everybody's, is such a their library of information. Like I learned that from my mom long time ago. Before they said to, interview all the famous people and important people. No, interview all your neighbors. Interview like everybody because they all got a special story. So, but so to be able to get people's stories, and pass it on to the next generation, not just famous people, just everybody. This is things you're not gonna find in Google, right? So that kind of database, right? That kind of using technology to have a database and being able that 7 generations down they can look it up and say, oh wow, we can listen to so and so talk and this and that, right? That's good. But if you have a gatekeeper, you know or or you cannot access it because you got to pay, or for whatever reason, right? For whatever reason, that, or they're using that information for something that it wasn't intended to. So then again, it's the good and the bad of using technology, right? The good and the bad of feeding incorrect information into artificial intelligence, right? And so that's what I started thinking about technology and traditional knowledge, because at one time, I remember just because of where I grew up, I remember seeing certain birds, and I remember I would know their call. I would know where they would show up, and all of a sudden, from a little kid, and then all of a sudden, when I got into high school, and then they made a tourist resort where I live, and all of a sudden they put it in a newspaper, and then next thing they start, the tourists started to know about it, and then all of a sudden it became common knowledge, and they started putting it all onto like social media and this and that. But now it's like common knowledge, right? And you don't have the experience of learning from experience, or learning from, whether you learn from an elders or you learn from that indigenous institution, you know that is set in place, right? Because not
Right.
everybody is supposed to learn how to, where the fishing ground is. If you're close with that uncle who's a lifetime fisherman or whatnot, maybe they'll take you out to that one certain fishing ground and tell you how to fish that way,
Yeah.
or hunting, or gathering certain medicine plants, or in my case with the art of hula and the oral traditions and everything that comes with that, right? But you're not supposed to know everything. Like, it's like you learn because that's your calling, right? And or you've been called, and it's a privilege to learn, right?
Right.
So, but all of a sudden, when everything is just at your fingertips, and or on the movies, and all of a sudden you can learn everything, and like it's just, is that the way that it's supposed to be? So
Right. Olco, if I might pivot a little bit, it's like you work a lot with cultural sites and sacred sites.
mhm.
You said Hawaii, as well as I was in Guam. Within the BBNJ space, we're dealing a lot with the marine protected areas. Um, any principles that you use within the cultural space, heritage space, actually, that we need to be mindful of when it comes to marine protected areas?
Yeah. Um, Thanks for asking about that. Interpretation of a cultural site, right? Significance of a cultural site. If we want to take it down to the smallest, right? And I'm going to try to be as really brief as I can, right? Let's take it to a place back in the when right in my backyard, when we had the Navy that was right over here, and it eventually became a tourist resort in my area, right? Okay, they want to clear this area. They're gonna bring in whatever archaeologists from Colorado or Texas or New York and whatnot. Oh, we need to check this. What do they know? And they were trained what, Oxford, what, I don't know, Columbia, I don't know. They're gonna come down here, they're gonna say, oh, and they're gonna whatever and try and make their own determination if it's significant or not. Maybe they're gonna talk to some one person, two people, whoever they want to talk to. I mean, they're not gonna even compensate them, right? And all of a sudden they become experts because they talk to so and so. But in the end, they're gonna make their determination. They're getting paid by the people that bought their ticket, and they're going to say, hey, and by the way, we have another contract for you, so make sure it's a conflict of interest, right? In the end, they're going to make their determination, and we want this base here, we want this runway here, so boom, 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 you see how it's going to go, how it's been going, right? So they're going to okay it either way, no matter what. Okay, so who is going to know the significance and the interpretation of that cultural site, of that sacred place? It's going to be the people who has the most intimate connection to that place, right? That's why you really need to ask sincerely, right? And then you need to respect what recommendations they have, even if it goes against your plan. Okay, now let's take that at the bigger level. Okay, now this might hurt. Okay, so on the bigger level, right? I know what I believe. I know what I want. I know what I want in my backyard. Okay, for whatever reason, okay, and I believe in what I believe, right? But when it comes to the marine protected area, if you're in somebody else's backyard, they might see it a different way. We need to respect that. And you know what? We're all cousins. We're all brothers and sisters. If we really believe that by allowing deep sea mining in this section, it's going to kill off all the tuna or all the whales or whatever, let's come to the table and let's tell them, so that whoever they can find out and say, like, this is why, this is what we found out, or this is not good for the environment. Everybody's going to die if you allow this. Maybe another country, maybe their island is devastated. This is the only way they can provide for the people. What are you offering them? Right? Hey, we got this industry, that industry, then there's this industry. We understand you're hurting. We understand, right? This is where the healing comes in. Maybe we can help you with this. Don't do the deep sea. We know it's a quick band-aid, but we can help you in this way. Just don't do it. And we can figure out some other way to support your people, because in the end, we're all going to lose if you allow it. But you cannot just point the finger and say, how dare you? You can't do this. It's so bad. Don't you know you're not a Pacific Islander? That's not the answer. So like we're all good people in the Pacific. We're all good people. Indigenous people are good people, I believe. Hey, we're all good people, period. There's a reason why I have a good brother who's up there in up in Utqiagvik, up in the North Barrow, up in Alaska. And I know they use every single part of the well, and in other places it's like, don't. and I understand why, and I believe in that too, and I respect it. I totally do. But I also know why for generations they've been doing it up in the north. And they believe that the well literally offers themselves to feed, and literally they use everything that feeds the village for months until the next full season. So, but so I think there's more to it, right? So there, if when it comes like when it comes to the marine protected resource area, we have a reason why we want to protect Papahana Mukwakia. And I believe in that, and I believe in the areas around what is it called now? The other islands in the south, marine anyways, I'm talking about that area. But even that area is even also how did the US get control of that area? There's a little bit kind of like but some of it is Kirbus and Marshalls, and so we just need to come together and talk story like a family, a functional family. We all got dysfunctional families. I do too.
Family first, absolutely. Ulukoa, thank you so much for your time. Like, my next guest is already waiting. Appreciate you from joining. Looking forward to to our next Zoom call to talk more about ocean and cultural heritage and everything else.
Let me
And
know when
also,
you come visit, bro. Hey, time flew, man.
absolutely. Well, I definitely make work on that.
Adios, aloha.
Aloha. Thank you so much.
Che.
Kia ora. So,
Kia ora, Gazali.
can you hear me? I hear a
No.
little bit of a
Can you turn it up? I can't hear you.
Well, I can hear you. I can hear you twice, actually.
Okay.
We got time.
We got time? Right. Where do I find the... Oh.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you, but the thing is...
You're really quiet. You're really quiet. I can hardly hear you.
Okay, so let me just ask you the question, so that I don't hear twice, and then you just talk for the next 10 minutes. How about that?
Okay, I still can hardly hear you, Gazali.
All right. I can hear myself. So the question is, I don't know why I'm screaming at this point. Do you want to like rejoin? Maybe that would help. Or hang on. Now she froze. Ay. Hang on.
Okay.
All right. All right. So yeah, I asked Doreen to come back in a little bit. Anyway, so this is this is a live stream with a range of guests from all over the Pacific, and so we're hoping that Doreen is able to and here she is. All right, can you hear me?
I can hardly hear you.
Oh, okay. You know what? Let me ask you the question, and you just talk for the next 10 minutes. So where do you think indigenous knowledge is going right now?
All right. Kia ora, and kia ora to everyone. I guess when I when you approached me, with this question, I thought, because I can't really give much on an ocean focus. But anyway, I thought, I'll look at what I know and what's happening, in my little corner of the world. I think we are sharing our knowledge. I think we have been for a little while. You know, our water, land, and an example of that, of course, is Te Awa Tupua, our river in Wanganui, New Zealand. Health and education, our kohanga reo language nests have been, you know, shared around the world for a little while now, since 1980s. Our arts and culture, you know, the weaving, the carving, so that's been out in the world for a little while. So I think we've just in that part we've been doing it for a little while. We know what the issues are, and I guess we just address them as they come along, like intellectual property rights, all of those, misappropriation, exploitation, and all those areas, and we address them as we face them, I guess. But I guess I wanted to go down a different path. When I was looking at your question, just this question, you know, I thought, oh, well, what do I really know about Western science and technology? So I just wanted to upskill myself and learn a little bit about the philosophy around it. So, you know, just the last few days I've been reading up on it, that it's a process that happened over many, many years, you know, hundreds of years. But I don't know, one of the articles I read, which was by Kay Morgan and R. Manuel from Auckland University, you know, and they actually put it nice and succinct for me, that, you know, it really came into focus in the 1700s under King Charles II. And I'll read a little bit of it, but it just sort of made sense. You know, Western science became free from constraints of morality, of ethics and culture. So that meant, for me, oh, well, then, you know, our way of life, our holistic view of a worldview didn't exist from that time. And their focus was on, you know, exploring the universe, or the secrets of the universe, and which led to, you know, knowledge, technology, and innovation. And I guess at that time, what they saw as important for the Western world was economic benefit, gain, and profit. So in my head, that was the philosophy that carried forward, because it's still relevant today. And then I looked at, you know, our Indigenous, for Māori, our worldview, which is holistic. And one of the things I was looking at was, because it doesn't marry up with Western at all. They don't recognise a holistic worldview. You know, that we already had in place sustainable development, you know, and it was, and it's still practiced today, reciprocity, where, you know, we give back, we take, but we give back to creation, whether it's fishing or weaving, that it's quite ingrained in our psyche, that if we take, we give back, and it helped, I guess, keep that balance. So that was our relationship, for me, that was our relationship with our environment, with our world. And it worked well. We didn't need anything else. I guess, you know, when we look at today, you know, and it seems like the Western world want access to our knowledge, our Indigenous knowledge, whether it's to help what's happening in the world, you know, climate change and that, you know, there's different areas, and it's actually quite big. I think, you know, I think it's a privilege to gain access to our knowledge. I think they've got to understand that first before we share, some deep and meaningful knowledge that can, so it won't be exploited, I guess. I don't know too much, Ghazali, about the oceans and that, other than our little patch in the world, protecting our resources. So at home here, where we've got tribes or hapu sub-tribes that are already cleaning up our rivers, our streams, already planting our native shrubs and trees. We've got groups that are, well, actually more and more people that are now doing Māori arts, crafts, learning, sharing, and retaining all of that knowledge. So I think at home here we're already doing a lot of that stuff. Whether or not we want to share it, I think it's I guess it's our choice. If I look at Te Awa Tupua, the process used there, they chose to share, but they also chose what they wanted to share. So I think for our groups and even individuals, the choice is still ours of how much and what we want to share with the world. I think there's still a lot of mistrust. So not everyone is going to share some knowledge. I certainly won't. I'll share some, but some I won't, because it just doesn't seem relevant. So where to from here? Ghazali, you direct me a little bit. I actually wrote things down so I wouldn't go off track, but I already have. Just a little bit. But one of the things that I did want to say at the beginning, but I sort of lost my train of thought, was the whakatauki. Te tiro ki mua haere atu ki, te tiro ki muri haere atu ki mua. Our past and our future are intertwined. And I believe that we need to go back. And those of us that aren't fluent in our language, that haven't got all the knowledge, we've all got, well, in my family, we've just got snippets of our culture, and we've been learning. So for me, I've been learning all my life, and I'm still learning. So looking back to the past, and like my grandparents and my parents, is still an ongoing journey for me. But what I have learned, is just different aspects in, say, the arts. I've been weaving for a little while, and I love sharing it with groups, here at home. But I also have overseas in Indigenous communities. I think those things can be shared, especially Indigenous, no Indigenous. They're not about to just snatch all of our knowledge and our resources. I think it's a shared learning we have when we, different tribes. I share and they also share. When you share in like mainstream schools, it's different again. They certainly wouldn't get some of the lovely stories that we've learned over the just over time, but they'd get enough to know and try and get an understanding and appreciation of our traditional practices. I guess so. What's your next question? I'm sort of all over the place in the process that I was going to take.
Well, first of all, can you hear me, or is that?
I only just. It's very quiet.
Okay. No, but it was like very interesting to. Well, first of all, thank you so very much for sharing that your thought process, like, and your thought steps as well. And it's to be very honest, like that's I process things in the same way. Also, so it is also like going like a monkey going from tree branch to tree branch. That is what happens in my mind as well. Now, what is and it's to be very honest, is like when it comes to Pacific and Indigenous knowledge, is the like even though like we talk about within the ocean context, the knowledge transcends that as well. Like it's not just like particularly bound to like the terrestrial, but also like to the ocean space, to the water space, and everything else. So like there's principles like what we've learned for the last 2.5 hours already, is that there's like there's principles that apply both to the not only to like the land space, but also the ocean space, and what we learned also to the outer space, or the space.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. So the when you did the exchange, actually, that's what I find interesting. In the past, you have done a lot of exchange between Aotearoa and Turtle Island. What were your experiences in terms of like, oh my God, like this is very interesting because this is almost the same, or this is like the exact opposite, or this is very different from how we do it.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I had those experiences. And firstly, you have to be invited to Indigenous communities. So it was never ring up and can we come? So we were invited, and for a sharing. So it was just sharing our experiences and some of our knowledge and practices. Honestly, it was like sitting back here in Aotearoa with whānau, with family. We were very, very similar thinking, language, and even our practices. Although it was beadwork, bone work, and hide, working with hide, the process was the same, seemed to be the same, similar. You give thanks, you give acknowledgement to the Creator, to our, the spiritual side to any craft or any practice. I was very, very respectful, just of them. But that's something I think we learn as Indigenous. Sometimes we get it mixed up at home here, but I think respect is one of the biggies when we go into another community, Indigenous community. And the different communities were just wanted to share. They were so excited with all their gains, everything they've gained, like, whether it's language, whether it's their language nests, their crafts. But so was I, just excited to share, what little bit of knowledge I have in those communities. We sat, I think Indigenous Americans are good storytellers. Our men might be better here. So it was really, really nice listening to the stories, the legends. I could see how, some of it is based in reality. It's used today. You know, I could share a little bit in storytelling, but I'm more a visual person, so it was better for me to talk about some of the crafts and learnings that I've been through. Yeah, I when I came home, I remember when I came home, because I did it for a little while, and I'd come home and share what I learned over there with everyone here, or I'd actually bring them over here, and they can tell everyone here what, you know, what's happening in their world. And so I was just really, really grateful that to be able to do that and to bring them here or go over there. Because I think it's all about sharing. Now, I was lucky enough to have key people around the country here, so I could, you know, visit a few tribal areas. Because I honestly, I believe if we learn something or we have that type of opportunity, then we should share it with everyone, you know, where we can. I also managed to put them on TV, interviews and you know, things like that, because I think the messages that they had to share were the same messages that we have, you know. Yeah. And I guess if I went back today, because I stopped that around 2019, mainly due to COVID. But if I went back today, it'll be great to see, you know, the changes and the improvements that they have now.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, like it's very interesting, like your what you shared just now. Meaning also because like what we're doing, what High Seas Alliance is doing right now, like it's the Pacific engagement, like an indigenous engagement strategy within the Pacific, and like which is now like only in the Pacific. However, if people in Africa, North America, Latin America might be interested as well. So from your point of view, it would be very interesting to like, all right, Ghazali, if you go to North America, don't do this, or like yeah, like some of these from your experiences that I think that's why like what you just shared like is super helpful. Just one final question, Doreen, is like there's a lot of indigenous youth probably listening back to this or scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, like if we chop this up. What is like the one thing that from your experiences, from your exchanges, what is the one thing that you'd like to instill to them when it comes to like the Pacific, when it comes to Pacific indigenous knowledge?
That I'm likely to what? Sorry? To
What is the one
pass
thing?
on?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I guess we're all in this together. You know, so you know, let's. I think you know, learning about our past actually is a good foundation for us to formalise a working relationship, to formalise strategies or a way forward, because it gives us that experience, that knowledge, and that appreciation of who we are. So I would, because I'd love to work more with our Indigenous peoples. I guess it's always remembering, you know, where we came from and where we are now. You know, having that knowledge of all of the things that happened in the middle, like, colonization and all those things, because that's made us who we are today. But also, I think we need to work together so that we can get good strategies and good, a way forward that suits us, that keeps our knowledge, our culture, our belief systems, spirituality intact. If we're going to, help with what's happening in the world today, we need to ensure that I think we need to ensure that who we are is kept intact, kept safe. And then we need to, I think I saw Aroha Mead's interview, Gazali, and I support what she's saying, is that if they want our knowledge, they have to take us with them. So I believe we need to be sitting at a table with them, and our corridor, our talk, we need to feel that it's valued. Sometimes it isn't.
Right. Well, Doreen, thank you so very much for joining this lineup and this marathon of this live stream. Well, hopefully you can hear me. And let's catch up soon to talk more about
Okay.
with the work that we're doing at the international space, but also like where the rubber meets the road, or where the pedal meets the wave, right?
Okay.
Then, but like, thank you so much for joining, and
Thank
also thank
you. Kaki ji.
you. All right, so we'll stay a little bit in Aotearoa context, because there is one Indigenous scientist that actually was unable to join, but like she was insisting on like providing a message. So we're in a way, in a couple of moments, you'll hear from Hini. She's an Indigenous scientist, and her take on where Indigenous knowledge, specific Indigenous knowledge, is going right now.
My humblest apologies. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for the live stream. All fingers crossed, I'll be making my way back to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so thank you to Gazali for inviting me along here today. And to answer this question, where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? To break down this question, I can only really answer this from the perspective of Aotearoa, New Zealand. I don't work across the Pacific. And I can only really answer this from the perspective of Indigenous science and the science system within New Zealand. And if we look at sort of, I suppose, Indigenous knowledge or Indigenous science and science itself, there's a bit of a difference there. To put it in its simplest terms, science doesn't actually have a true definition because the world hasn't come together and decided what that is. They can't. There's too many opposing opinions, a bit like our negotiations we were just at, Gazali. But to put it, I suppose, in its very simplest form, science is observing and understanding our natural world, our natural environment. And I think for Indigenous science, we go one step beyond that, because we understand we are a part of this world, we are descended from this world, but we are a product of our environment around us. We are the rivers that we drink, the air that we breathe. We are the, animals and plant life that we eat from. We are a reflection of that environment surrounding us. And that's why we have so many different cultures across the world, because we can't all be sort of linear in that space. We all come from these different spaces, and that is what made us who we are today. And so I think that's sort of the main differences between sciences, creates this sort of barrier, this to take a step back and observe from afar, whereas for Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous science, we are stepping into it because we are connected to all of these things around us. And it reminds me of this wakataki, which is from one of the kaumātua back home, from one of the elders back home, which is ka ore e angai te iau no mai rānei kia no owe I tēnei ao. Ko e matangaro ka mōiotia te mauri. So nothing was ever created in this world to live in isolation, that even a hidden face can be detected by its impact on something else. And so within the science realm, they try and separate everything else connected to it to find out this one question to see if it's one link connection. Whereas within Te Ao Māori, we're looking at multiple connections and bringing that in together to fully understand it as a whole. So within New Zealand right now, I think it's still only about 2% of all scientists are Māori or Pacifica. So there's not a great number of this, and there's a reason for that. If we look at our education system, one, there's not enough Māori or Pacifica science teachers. Not our fault, there's a reason. Two, we're not actually promoted to walk into this space. I can tell you right now that I had been doing some work at a school in New Zealand, an introduction to aquaculture, and I had heard there one of the teachers say to a group of Māori students, I have never seen a Māori scientist. And I was standing right there and I was like, hi, I'm here, right here. But, you know, it also reminds me of what Wena Cooper said in terms of we must be careful about what we say in front of our children because they will take that in and they'll absorb that. And then they will close off that pathway that is absolutely available to them. Because if we look at our Indigenous knowledge, it is science. It's observable science. The easiest case I can give is like, because my work is within shellfish, it's where my main expertise is. The word for muscle, not these muscles, this muscle, is kutai in Māori. And kutai, ku is to pinch, and tai is the tide. It's the pinching of the tide. And where do you find mussels? Filter feeding in the tide. And so we didn't just randomly pluck this name out from anywhere. We literally were observing these animals and understanding them and where they come from and seeing what is connected to them. It's also within our genealogical knowledge as well. So in a simple form of where a mussel descends from, you have our Sky Father Ranginui and our Earth Mother Papatuānuku. They came together. They had Tane Mahuta, who's the god of the forest. He had a relationship with Hene Tūpare Maunga, the maiden of hills, mountain and ranges. And then they had Parewenua Mia, the originator of water. Now, if you think about it, where do clouds accumulate and where does rain fall? They fall in our mountain ranges the most and in our forests the most. And so then they form river systems and the water systems. And that flows out. And so Parewenua Mia then has a relationship with Kiwa, the guardian of the ocean. They have Enemoana, the maiden of the ocean. And then she has Wareremu, which are seaweeds, and Kutai, which are mussels. And so you can see through that link that where mussels descend from, what feeds them, actually starts way up in the mountains and the forest systems. And this was really prevalent when a cyclone called Cyclone Gabriel came through our country on the east coast, and it decimated the oceans there because there was no forest on the land supporting the land. So all of the land slipped down into the ocean, and it covered our seaweed systems and it covered our mussel systems. And so what our Indigenous knowledge and our Indigenous science actually has to give is not only knowledge of connection, knowledge of understanding of where everything sort of descends from, specific to the area, but it also does science communication, and science communication really, really well. These are very easy concepts to teach on to children. to make sure that they understand the natural world around them. Whereas I don't think that our science system really does that. It does a very, very good job of scaring people away and utilizing fancy language that really, really is unnecessary, like crepuscular, a animal who feeds at dawn and dusk. It's kind of just slightly unnecessary sometimes. But anyways, it is what it is at this current situation. But I think where our Indigenous knowledge is going is to great heights, because not only are we developing it further, but our science community is really screaming for it, because they, in a lot of cases, do not know how to find balance within nature and think about that in that space that we naturally find possible to do. And so they're screaming for it, really, to my face, for, to have that within their research projects, to have it within innovation, to have it to help support storytelling and to help support effective communication towards all communities. But that becomes a slight issue when they restrict you from doing the actual science, because what they really want is sort of just this fluffy story that they don't understand. So it really, really becomes important about doing science with Indigenous people, not for Indigenous people within the space, because that's when you get our knowledge, our innovative minds, our really balanced and reciprocal environmental research. It gets taken and a bit romanticized and put into myth and legend. And so I suppose it is an amazing space to be in, where our Indigenous knowledge is going, but it also comes with a warning in terms of knowing yourself, but knowing what other people can do when utilizing our Indigenous knowledge systems. And so I thank all the work from all of the previous people in terms of the laws and the policies that they have put in place to protect us as we go along, continuously developing and creating, I suppose, this new Indigenous knowledge science space that is actually old into this, I suppose, colonial systems that we work in today. But I suppose the one message that I will want to take or drive home for everyone within this space in terms of where is our Indigenous knowledge going, it should be going to our children, and it should be telling them that if you are Indigenous, you are already a scientist. With love from this heart to you all. Tēnā koutou. Bye.
Oh, well, that is definitely a quote. Like, if you're Indigenous, you're already a scientist. So let's pivot from Aotearoa. We'll go back to Fiji, and we'll bring in Auntie Sapira to the stage. Auntie, when it comes to Pacific Indigenous knowledge, it's where do you see it going right now? You explained to me that you're as a you're a what's the right word, a champion of Indigenous identity, and like you have a very strong sense of protection when it comes to traditional culture and spiritual belief, weaving that into it. So the question, like, where do you see Indigenous knowledge, Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? What are your thoughts about that?
Malambula, everyone. It is an honor indeed to be here sharing this topic with you guys. I wish I can just speak in my own dialect, and but because it is for everybody's consumption, and I'm glad that I'm going to use the national language here in Fiji, which is English, which we can understand each other. I brought up from an island home in a small island in the eastern of Fiji. My upbringing was such that my parents tend to protect me in such a way, the indigenous way. And I'm glad that the Itaukei culture is where the woman is very much well protected. And I'm glad that I was brought up and I obey and listen to all the teachings that I was brought up with. And growing up, I can't outgrow from that. It becomes part and parcels of my life. I still love to eat the Fijian foods. And yes, and making it to the best that I can. Trying to keep to the fact that this is the only way to keep my traditional knowledge intact. It's in the way that I live. I live it in me. The way that I dress, the way that I keep to myself, and I don't wear makeup. I don't. It's not because it's just me living the traditional way. I want to keep it as much as in myself, rather than just saying it, rather than just preaching it. I live up to the fact that though the world around me, as in the Pacific, I traveled far and wide to the Eastern Asia. But I took with me myself, Itaukei Indigenous me, in the way that I live it. So wherever I go, whether I'm here in Fiji or out in one of the Asian countries or in Africa, even to the two COPs that I went to, I took myself with me. I don't go and become someone else out there. Um, uh, and that my faith um, grows, my spiritual life grows, and I connected very much to the environment that I live in, understanding that everything is created by God. I was just here to be its steward. In that, I looking at from a holistic point of view, I love to embrace my culture in my spirituality. That's why I can't do without it, because it's what I believe in. As closer and as stronger is my spiritual life, so as my relationship to my environment, to nature, and that's something that I really cradle and I really keep it with me, because the more I know the Creator, the more I treasure my traditional knowledge. Because if I look back, um, back at home, I just got back home in July. It was the installation of our traditional chief, where being from a warrior clan, we have a hefty work to do to prepare our men folks who are the warriors of the chief, Turanga Twinau, so that their dresses, everything. We're praying for the weather. We're praying that the sun is not going to be too hot, that they will stand and do their traditional obligations without having to fear about the rain or the sun. So we women were praying. And for once, I was like sitting where I was sitting and watching all the men folks, the warriors standing with their clubs. And I was praying because I know their work will be much easier and they will do the best that they can because I've been praying over it. That's what I believe in. And back at home, we are not worried about what we're going to eat. Even this climate change is taking its toll in our island homes. We know that the fishes are going deeper, but we still know they're fish holes. We still look into the horizon and see that the tide and the weather are. This particular species is gonna be there in the hole at this time. It's very nice with what you believe in and what you have been lived in your traditional knowledge. It's like they are a link that they cannot be separated. I do believe in that. I believe in this as part and parcels of my life growing up. I bring it to my family, even though it's a very contrast with my husband. But we do have like memories of traditional knowledge while I do. But we have places in which that we bring it together into the table and we sort of just sharing it. We love it to be just who we are, what we are. We're not going to be changed by anything. I know that the 16 years in Fiji was really hard before the 2022 elections, but I just be myself and managed to get through without having to cross so many hardship or having to challenge it in any other way. I keep it to myself. I just being myself, and always it's in my prayer that my integrity is not marred by anything else. But I love to cradle the traditional knowledge in the weaving of mats, in the plating of mangi mangi, in all of this. I I just I just try to enjoy what I do best, having to keep all my traditional knowledge intact because it becomes part of me. I just can't do away with it. Um, if anybody knows me, they will know it. I will never change my hairstyle. I don't put any earrings or anything. It's just like not me. Uh, it takes away the beauty that God has implanted in me, and to be just traditional knowledge. All I am giving it to my homes. I'm doing service to the Creator. That what makes me enjoy who I am, because I know that I don't want to change what God created to change my. There's so many of my cousins, there's so many of my relations have left Fiji and gone abroad. I can't just do that. To me, Fiji is my home. I will stay here. I will die here because I will live in here. So it is very important that I keep up who I am. Today is Sabbath. I'm here in the church community, which is come to church away from home and stay here connected to the Creator. That to me helps me to be who I am. No one gonna change Safira. Not the weather, not climate change, uh, uh, not modern society, not technology. I'll just be who I am. I mean, those are signs, and that helps us to connect. But I'm just who I am because I love what God had created me to be, and that helps me. While everybody else will say that traditional knowledge is gone far, like here in Fiji, or when we discuss this issue, it's like we are losing it. We are losing the thread of it. I said, no, it's just in us to keep it or to lose it. I don't really think that ages and time that changes, that take away a part of my culture away from. I am keeping it everything because I live it. I don't. I don't. Yeah, I don't allow anything to take it away from. That's what I meant when I said you got to live it. You got to be who you are. You got to be who you are, and that's something that I really enjoy doing it. Um, yes, I wish I can. I'm going to Auckland tomorrow morning, and I'm sharing with the Pacific. I want them to see me as I am. No makeup, no earrings, no fancy clothes, just me. And I know it's cold there, but that doesn't allow me to put in my long pants and wait around and fancy myself with all the Auckland attires and this. No, I'll just go with my suli and chapa and I'll just be fine with it. And I know that my God will protect me from the winter that's out there. I've been to set in Auckland for I love it because I'm going as myself, and I won't allow anything to change it. Um, that's that's the beauty of having to link your traditional knowledge to your spirituality, because you know the Creator who created you, and the nature surrounds you will live up to you if you just have to serve the Creator God. Whatever situation, whatever the weather, it doesn't changes. It will never take away your culture with you because you believe in the God that you serve, the God who created everything, the God who gives, who change, doesn't change with the time. I'm not going to change with the time. I'm going to be just myself. I'll be going to Auckland and I'll just be taking what I was worried that I think, oh no, I'm serving a great God who is everywhere and he will help me. I don't have to change to suit the weather and the places I'm going to. I'm just going to take the Itauke Fijian girl that was brought up like 58 years ago to Auckland and to wherever I'm going to go. It will never change the me, the indigenous knowledge in me, the traditional culture that it's inbuilt in me, it's in my blood, it's in my system. I will never allow anything to take it away. That's what makes me me. Uh, I know that because I do believe that when God created the earth, He 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 put everything good in it. Everything, every end of the day, He said it is good. So to me, wherever I go, if I obey to keep nature intact, not to abuse it, not to uh, try and change the environment, they will respect me and they will assist me to enjoy wherever I am, no matter what's the situation, what the season. That's something I really believe in. And it works well with me for all these 58 years. Tell you the truth, I've never changed my hairstyles. I've never changed the way I look and the way I keep myself. It's just me. I'm a vegetarian. I do exercise. I do love nature. I do planting. I do everything anyone can enjoy. But that doesn't mean that will take away the culture that I've built in me. I am me because God created me as I am.
Appreciate it. Auntie, unfortunately, the next guest is already waiting.
I'm okay.
But it's thank you so much for taking the time on Sabbath to share with us your knowledge and your wisdom and the importance of spirituality as well. It's undeniably that spirituality and the church has a very important role within the Pacific. So, very much thank you for highlighting that. So thank you so much for doing that. Please, yes, stay being yourself, and looking forward to catching up soon in a Zoom call, or maybe in Nandi or Suva. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my son Kasali. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Tiana, kia ora.
Kia ora.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Busy. I'm outside the front.
You're on kitchen duty. That's what I reckon.
Yes.
All right. Well, so I'll make it quick then, because it's I know that it's super important for you. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for joining this lineup. You very active in the climate space, human rights space, undeniably. So very keen on your take, or hearing your take on like where you think Pacific Indigenous knowledge is going right now.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the invite. Hard act to follow, Faihini and Auntie Safaria. I think when I was thinking about this question in this party on where Pacific knowledge is going, I think really we're at a juncture of like global society as a whole, realizing that the systems and structures that we exist under and have built really in kind of like modern history, like quite recently, are not serving us, not serving our place, not serving our environment. And so the need for a return to what was, and what was being not anti-development or anti-growth, but being that our knowledge and our ways of being is how we live in tune and in sync with the environment and each other. And I think that Pacific knowledge on a global scale is being looked to because though we come from small islands, our ocean covers 70% of the earth, and we've existed like other Indigenous peoples, like through a lot of raupatu, a lot of colonization and colonial forces, and we're still here. And not only are we still here, but the ways in which we have practiced our culture, our sustainable like being with the environment still exists. And I think that we're at a junction now where like the Western society is looking to us and towards our ways of being to carry us forward. Yeah.
So how do you think that we as the Western society is behaving and everything else, like how do you think what should we be mindful of? Any pitfalls you see?
Our science is never going to work at a Western table. And I think that our science too isn't necessarily able to be transported to another takiwa, to another region, even to another island or another nation. It's very place-based. And so the relationships that we have with place the relationships that we have with systems and structures must be informed by that place and what that particular place tells us. So like as Auntie said, she's coming to Aotearoa. We are in the depths of Hine Takurua, which is winter. In the tropics, they don't have that. And so the way that we tell our seasons and our stories of time and stars is very different to theirs. Even though we all fall under Te Moana Nui Akiwa, we're very distinct. And I think that the way in which the commodification of our knowledge and our science has happened at like quite a rapid global speed, we need to be careful as Indigenous peoples of the Pacific so that our knowledge doesn't get co-opted without us, and so that we can always remain in control of where and how it's practiced and who's in charge of that knowledge and what it's like, what policy or practice it's informing in the West.
Right. Well, and then let me pivot then to the ocean space, obviously, because we're now at BBNJ over here, and any thoughts that you have within like protection of indigenous rights in the ocean space? Yeah, like any how did that ever cross your mind?
Yeah, I think the ocean space is really where we need to wake up and unify, especially in our region, because if we come from the largest ocean and our ocean is less than 30% protected, I think what is like 11 or something, or even less, I don't know. I think, what would it look like for us to be in solidarity across our region and ensure that our whole ocean is protected? Like, the classic, our ocean doesn't divide us, it unites us, but how do we be united in the protection of our oceans for our future generations, but also for our current generations who have had to endure like nuclear waste, all kinds of waste in the ocean, loss of tipuna species, loss of ability to practice in their mahinga kai, in their pātaka kai, that kind of thing as well. I think we need to have some wānanga on how we can collectivize better across our region so that our region can also be taken seriously in negotiations like the high seas, like the plastics, so that we don't get left behind other global north countries and regions who have a dominant voice because resource allows them to be. Though we're small, we are mighty.
Right. Well, the one thing that also like that crossed my mind is that you have been like very active in the fossil fuel non-proliferation space, climate space. Any challenges and or opportunities that you see when it comes to, for example, within the Pacific region in terms of like one, indigenous rights, and the other thing is indigenous peoples, like the concept of indigenous peoples.
Yeah. I think in terms of the climate wins, all of the climate wins that we see in the big international arena have been led by Pacific peoples. 1.5 was led by Marshallese youth. The fossil fuel non-proliferation was spearheaded by the endorsement of Vanuatu and Tuvalu, and now 14 Pacific nations, to name a few. And so I think that we have always been ahead of the game in terms of advocating for our livelihoods. When it comes to Indigenous peoples in our region, I think we're a really interesting region because we have both Indigenous peoples living under colonial rule and Indigenous peoples who are now their own states, but still live under a lot of colonial imposition because they were once colonized by the forces that be. And so I think we're seeing a regional reclamation of what it means to be Indigenous from within a country that is colonized. Like in Aotearoa, we've had the biggest uprising or collectivizing of Indigenous peoples against the state that we've seen in a few years. In the region globally, we've seen that as well because a lot of people are realizing that against the systems and structures, it is going to be the voices of Indigenous peoples that needs to be heard first and foremost, because like we live closest to the impact of the poly crises that we face and also live on the front lines of, for a lot of Indigenous peoples in the region, extraction. And so I think the rights of Indigenous peoples provides us a framework to ensure that in any international space, we're not just seen as stakeholders or interested parties, but we're seen as rights holders who come with a distinct relationship to the places that we come from. Yeah.
Right. All right. So final question. Something that has been intriguing is And please, please, please explain that to everyone that's listening, watching. The Pacific's point of difference is our shared AI.
Oh, yeah. So like, I just reckon like artificial, like in ancestral intelligence is our point of difference because again in Te Moana Nui Akiwa, we are bound by a shared whakapapa that links all of our island homes together. And even the biggest place, Ahitereiria, our cousins, they are linked to so-called Melanesia and Micronesia. And so I think that different to any other region, while we're our own distinct peoples, we have a shared genealogy that means that we're each tuakana and taina, so share a sibling kind of relationship that is different to any people, which means the way that we show up as a region in any place acknowledges that. And so we show up with a different kind of respect to our elders, to our youth, to the people that are sharing knowledge. And I think that a lot of other regions look to the way in which we maintain and are in relationship because we can challenge ourselves, but also remain deeply familial because of the shared whakapapa. So it's like, I don't know, we have a lot of Samoan diaspora in Aotearoa, and it's sometimes like, oh, Kazi, up to, what are you doing? And vice versa. They can say that to us as the Taina of the Pacific, as the younger siblings. And so I think our ancestral intelligence links us together through our creation stories and through the migration of the way that we've traversed all of our islands before discoverers found each of our places. And I think that is our point of difference to the rest of the world.
Right. All right. Final question. Which one is the best coast in Aotearoa?
Oh, East always.
All right. So everyone that's on the West Coast, let me know in the comments how you feel about that. I appreciate it. Tiana, thank you so much for taking the time from family, from community. Looking forward to catching up soon on everything we're doing. So, and yeah, keep on doing what you're doing.
Good luck in New York.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, that's it. That's all she wrote. That's 3.5 hours of live stream on on how to Indigenous now. Where is Pacific Indigenous knowledge going right now? Within the context of BBNJ PrepCom 2, and just so it's not a quick recap because that is not what we're going to do. But this is all like for the launch of the High Seas Alliance engagement strategy. Indigenous engagement strategy. We're starting off within the Pacific, and it's mainly because the richness of references to Indigenous peoples within the BBNJ context is unprecedented within any context. For example, you look at CBD, murky at best. BBNJ, like so you have over 3,000 references to Indigenous peoples' knowledge and rights. The lesson learned is that what we don't want to do, and this is from my personal point of view, not a High Seas Alliance point of view, but my personal point of view is that like we're creating all these amazing processes within the international space, but we don't have like the people that are walking through that door. With the richness that the BBNJ provides, this engagement strategy is very important. So it creates a pipeline in terms of like making sure that like all the places, all the positions, and everything else that we're creating within the BBNJ space that are actually filled with Indigenous peoples, but not just from the Pacific, but from other regions as well. Hence, the High Seas Alliance engagement strategy is being launched. Like you saw, like the opening message of the executive director, who is now here as well. Yeah, so that is, and you heard Olivier as well. They talk about like the about the engagement strategy, like that we're starting off in the Pacific. Anyway, so thank you for joining. If you made it thus far, let us know in the comments. Send a message to High Seas Alliance. Like, was it good? Was it bad? Or should I stand in the corner and uppercut myself? Just let us know. Yeah, BBNJ PrepCom 2 we just ended week 1. We'll start week 2 on, well, not on Monday, on Sunday actually, or if there's at all like a pause in between the 2 dates, weeks. So that's where we are at within the BBNJ space. Keep an eye on this space because it is an incredible opportunity for indigenous peoples. To like what you've heard. Like I don't need to bring up the reasons. You heard all these speakers actually give up the reasons why Pacific Indigenous knowledge is super important and where it is going right now, and how the BBNJ can benefit from that. Or you can also flip it, how indigenous peoples can actually positively influence the BBNJ. Anyway, I'll stop talking now because otherwise I'll sound like start talking nonsense. So have a good one and thank you so much. And yeah, keep an eye on High Seas Alliance, like socials and my own as well. Sorry, shameless plug. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.